So, dear Mr. Vice President of Vice Mayor of Rhodos, ladies and gentlemen, dear friends, I'm delighted to be given the opportunity to welcome you to the 2023 Summer Aviation Forum held at this wonderful place, a place known for its healing waters since a few centuries before Christ. First of all, I would like to express my thanks to each and every one of you for participating in this event. And I'm happy to see some friends from last year and to be among some of the top leaders in the aviation world. So, welcome to the Summer Aviation Forum 2023, organized by Air Transport News, the Hellenic Aviation Society, and is under the auspices of the South Aegean region and the municipality of Rhodes, and in collaboration with DOPAR, DERMAE, and the Connaught Chamber of Commerce and Industry, entitled Aviation and Tourism, Challenges and Opportunities. The organization of this forum is in itself a great event for our island, and it is important because it marks two main factors that contribute to our existence. Tourism contributes to more than 65% of our economy, and over 80% of tourists visiting our island come by air. With that, it is certain that aviation and tourism play a fundamental role in our lives, but they also have their own share of challenges. This forum provides an opportunity to open a dialogue on developments in field of aviation and tourism, a dialogue that reveals challenges and development goals in areas related to environment, sustainability, and much more. At this point, I would like to thank our sponsors, Aegean Airlines, Embraer, Fraport, Regent, Frequentis, Avibright, Dodekanissos Seaways, Embros, and Story Tada. I now ask the Director General of the Hermes Air Transport Organization, Dr. Kostas Iatrou, to come up to the stage for a welcome address.
Thank you, dear friends. It's an honor to have you here, Mr. Vice Mayor. It's really great to be back here in the always friendly and wonderful island of Rhodes. This is the second time that the Summer Aviation Forum takes place here. After last year we were here in the Calithea Springs. Air transport and tourism and structurally interdependent. The demand for air transport is of derived nature, essentially depending on leisure, business, and other tourism activities taking place. Tourism collapsed during COVID-19, but is now strongly rebounding. 2023 is expected to be a record year in many European Mediterranean countries, at least. You know, also Greece, from last year, we almost reached the figures of 2019. Of course, sustainability and resilience prove of major importance for tourism destination, and this is also inevitably related to our transport strategies and operation. This year's Summer Aviation Forum brings together leaders of aviation from all over the world, and I would like to thank all of you that you are here today in Rhodos, that will discuss the future of air transport and tourism in the post-COVID era, and how to navigate emerging geopolitical and economic uncertainties that we face around the globe. I wish a successful event. I would like to thank you once again for being here. Thank you.
I ask now the Vice Mayor of Rhodes, Mr. Kostas Taraslias, to come up to stage for a welcome address.
Dear President of the Summer Aviation Forum, ladies and gentlemen, distinguished member of the Summer Aviation Forum, I would like to welcome you in Rhodes. On behalf of the Mayor of the city, Mr. Adonis Kabourakis, who wasn't possible to be with us, I would like to thank you for being in Rhodes once more. Rhodes is a magnificent place for having holidays, and of course a lot of conferences are operated here. So we are delighted and we appreciate that we have you here again. So please allow me to read his speech because he couldn't be here, and please allow me to read it in Greek, so I have a translator with me. Thank you very much for this. Ο κλάδος των αερομεταφορών έχει ζωτική σημασία για την οικονομία της Ρόδου μας. Ωραία. Ο τουρισμός συμβάλλει πάνω από 90% στην τοπική οικονομία και πάνω από το 80% των τουριστών επισκέπτονται το νησί μας, έρχονται αεροπορικώς.
The transport sector is of critical importance for the economy of Rhodes. It contributes with over 90% in local GDP. Over 80% of tourists arrive by air. And thanks to transport, the Rhodian economy is able to literally take off.
Σύμφωνα με τη μελέτη της ΑΙΑΤΑ, η Ευρώπη είναι η μεγαλύτερη αγορά επιβατικών ροών και από προς την Ελλάδα ακολουθούν από τη Βόρεια Αμερική και τη Μέση Ανατολή.
Based on a recent IATA study, Europe is the largest market with respect to traffic flows in and out of Greece, followed by North America and the Middle East.
Πάνω από 26 εκατομμύρια επιβάτες θα φτάσουν φέτος από την Ευρώπη, δηλαδή το 92,2% του συνόλου. Και πάνω από 2,7 εκατομμύρια ξένοι επισκέπτες θα φτάσουν στο νησί μας το 2023.
Over 26 million passengers are expected to arrive this year in Greece from Europe. That's more or less 92% of total. About 2.7 million tourists are expected to arrive on the island of Rhodes in 2023.
Η αεροπορική βιομηχανία, συμπεριλαμβανομένων των αεροπορικών εταιρεών και της εφοδιαστικής αλυσίδας, εκτιμάται ότι συνεισφέρει 3,5 δισεκατομμύρια δολάρια στο ΑΕΠ της Ελλάδος, ενώ συνολικά 457.000 θέσεις εργασίας υποστηρίζονται από αεροπορικές μεταφορές και τουρίστες που φτάνουν αεροπορικώς.
The indirect and indirect impacts of the transport sector are estimated at $3.5 billion in terms of the Greek GDP. About 457,000 jobs directly or indirectly supported by transport and tourists who arrive by air.
Η αλήθεια λοιπόν είναι πως τουρισμός δεν μπορεί να υπάρξει χωρίς αερομεταφορές. Όπως εξίσου αλήθεια είναι και το αντίστροφο. Εκ των πραγμάτων λοιπόν, τουρισμός και αερομεταφορές πρέπει να βρίσκονται σε ένα διαρκή συγχρονισμό τόσο σε επίπεδο σχεδιασμού όσο και σε επίπεδο εφαρμοσμένων πρακτικών.
Therefore, it is obvious that tourism cannot exist without transport, and likewise, transport cannot exist without tourism. So the two are in a relationship of structural interdependence, and there is a very strong nexus between them.
Σήμερα βρισκόμαστε μπροστά σε νέες προκλήσεις που τείνουν να επηρεάζουν ριζικά το μεταφορικό έργο αλλά και τον τουρισμό. Η κλιματική κρίση ανεβάζει τον πύχη των προκλήσεων, γεγονός που το ζήσαμε τόσο σε τοπικό όσο και σε εθνικό επίπεδο με τις φωνικές πυρκαγιές που κατέκαψαν εκατοντάδες χιλιάδες στρέμματα και περιουσίες.
Today we are facing new challenges which pose severe difficulties on both transport and tourism. Most significantly, we have big issues regarding climate change. That's a major challenge, and that's something that the island of Rhodes recently experienced as a result of the big forest fires.
Όμως η Ρόδος μας άντεξε, περπατώντας στον δρόμο της αλληλεγγύης και της συλλογικής εθελοντικής προσφοράς και δράσης. Έτσι κατάφερε η Ρόδος να επουλώνει σιγά σιγά τις πληγές της και να ατενίζει το μέλλον πιο αισιόδοξα, καθώς πετύχαμε την ολική επαναφορά στην κανονικότητα της τουριστικής σεζόν και το νησί μας σφίζει από ζωή.
However, Rhodes managed to survive. It's characterized by very strong resilience based on the help of everybody, including the volunteers who played a major role as well. So currently the island is back on track to normality, getting all these tourists and be at the front of its tourism season.
Επιπλέον, οι τιμές της ενέργειας και των καυσίμων, λόγω και του πολέμου στην Ουκρανία, αποτελούν ένα ακόμα μεγάλο ζήτημα, το οποίο επηρεάζει αισθητά όλους τους τομείς της οικονομίας.
Another major challenge to discuss relates to energy prices, which, as a result of the war in Ukraine, have gone up substantially.
Τόσο στις μεταφορές όσο και στον τουρισμό, η καινοτομία και οι νέες τεχνολογίες μπορούν να δίνουν όλο και πιο πολλές λύσεις φιλικές προς το περιβάλλον, προασπίζοντας τη βιωσιμότητα των δύο κλάδων. Άλλωστε, η Ευρωπαϊκή Ένωση φαίνεται πως ανοίγει το δρόμο για τις πράσινες αερομεταφορές από το 2025, με στόχο τη μείωση εκπομπών άνθρακα κατά 2/3 μέχρι το 2050 ως ένα βήμα προστασίας του περιβάλλοντος.
Innovation and new technologies can play a major role in both transport and tourism with respect to the protection of the environment. And as you all know, Europe and European Commission are very much in favor of green solutions that would allow us to reduce carbon emissions by 2/3 up to 2050.
Στη Ρόδο τα τελευταία χρόνια έχουμε ξεκινήσει την εφαρμογή πράσινων δράσεων και πολυμέτωπων πολιτικών για την προστασία του περιβάλλοντος. Η Ρόδος μας διαθέτει όλα τα εχέγγυα για να ξεχωρίσει διεθνώς ως πρότυπο της βιώσιμης ανάπτυξης, καθώς μπορεί να συνδυάσει την αυθεντική φιλοξενία με τον πράσινο τουρισμό και την καινοτομία.
Over the last few years, Rhodes has invested heavily in implementing green programs which are characterized by a spirit of sustainability. The idea is to combine sustainable development with authentic hospitality and set all this in an innovative and creative framework.
Κυρίες και κύριοι, είναι ευρέως γνωστό ότι οι αερομεταφορές και ο τουρισμός μας φέρνουν όλους πιο κοντά. Προάγουν τη φιλία και την αλληλεπίδραση μεταξύ των λαών, με τρανό παράδειγμα την απευθεία σύνδεση της Ρόδου μας με την Κωνσταντινούπολη, ως απότοκο της περσινής μας συνάντησης.
Air transport and tourism are very important, ladies and gentlemen. They help bring people together. Connectivity is of major importance in this context, and a great example is the direct flight that now exists between Rhodes and Istanbul.
Υπό αυτό το πλαίσιο, οι αερομεταφορές είναι κλειδί για βιώσιμο μέλλον, σταθερότητα, ευημερία και ανάπτυξη. Η σημερινή μας συνάντηση εδώ στη Ρόδο ευελπιστώ πως θα δώσει νέα τροφή για σκέψη, για δράση, για παρεμβάσεις και λύσεις.
In this context, transport play a key role in terms of promoting sustainability, stability, and prosperity. And this very meeting that we have here will set the foundations for further food for thought.
Κλείνοντας, θέλω να συγχαρώ την ψυχή του Summer Aviation Forum, τον δόκτορα Κώστα Ιατρού και την Ελληνική Αεροπορική Ένωση για την άψογη διοργάνωση του φόρουμ που έχει καθιερωθεί πλέον ως θεσμός και τιμά τη Ρόδο μας.
Last but not least, I would like to warmly thank the spirit, the very heart of Summer Aviation Forum, Dr. Kostas Iatrou and the Hellenic Aviation Society for promoting this very forum as an institution in Rhodes.
Είμαι σίγουρος ότι το φετινό φόρουμ θα στεφθεί με απόλυτη επιτυχία, διότι ο διάλογος και η ανταλλαγή απόψεων οδηγούν πάντα τις κοινωνίες προς την πρόοδο.
I'm confident that this year's forum will be very successful, sending the fundamentals for a dialogue which will be fruitful and very interesting.
Τέλος, να σας ευχαριστήσω θερμά όλους για την παρουσία σας και τη συμμετοχή σας, αφού χάρη σε όλους εσάς η Ρόδος γίνεται για άλλη μια φορά το επίκεντρο του δημόσιου διαλόγου για τις αερομεταφορές και τον τουρισμό.
Finally, I would like to warmly thank all of you for being here and for participating in this very forum, making Rhodes at the epicenter of the discussion regarding aviation and tourism.
Γι' αυτό να γνωρίζετε ότι η πόρτα του Δημάρχου της Ρόδου είναι πάντα ανοιχτή στις νέες ιδέες που μπορεί να είναι χρήσιμες για την ανάπτυξη του νησιού μας και την ευημερία των κατοίκων του.
For this very reason, I would like you to know that our door as mayor of the municipality of Rhodes is always open to you and to new ideas that may foster further development in aviation tourism.
Σας ευχαριστώ πάρα πολύ. Καλή επιτυχία στο συνέδριο.
We thank Professor Dr. Andreas Papatheodorou for the translation. And now I ask for the keynote speaker, Mr. Henrik Hololei, Horse Class Advisor of the European Commission, for his keynote address.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Well, what a wonderful setting. As always, Kostas and his team has exceeded the expectations. And it's such a pleasure to be here in the wonderful island of Rhodes, and of course the presence of Vice Mayor of Rhodes is of course adding a particular flavor and importance to the event. And also thank you very much for being open to bringing the aviation community representatives here and giving us a wonderful hospitality in this great island. And you said that you hope we come back. I can definitely be sure about that, and I'm sure that many others as well. Now, 4 years ago, I mean, as we know, world is full of surprises, and world is also full of all kinds of challenges. 4 years ago, we were experiencing the best ever times in the civil aviation since the start of the civil aviation slightly more than 100 years ago. Everything seemed to be great, everything seemed to be invincible, and everything was going only to one direction. Everybody was thinking about the profits, nobody was thinking about the losses. 4 years ago, that was 4 years ago. 3 years ago, everything was totally different. Couldn't have been more different, 180 degrees more different. We were in the middle of the COVID, the tourism had stopped, the aviation had come from the best times ever to the worst times ever since the start of the civil aviation more than 100 years ago. And that was something, of course, nobody was expecting to happen. Now, if we think about 1 year ago, then there were more than green shoots, because it was clear that aviation is coming back, tourism is coming back. And the only thing was that the sector itself was not ready for that. The disruptions that we experienced last year were probably one of the worst disruptions for the traveling public that we have experienced since the beginning of the civil aviation more than 100 years ago. This year, the picture is again different. We have an extremely high demand. We have also basically surpassing the levels of 2019, even though we are still having in the European airspace 9% less flights on average, year to year, about 6% from compared to 2019 on the week. But let's be honest, also part of it is the fact that there has been a low take-up from the Asian front, and there are also airspaces in Europe which are closed, like the Ukrainian airspace, because of the Russian aggression. And of course, in fact, we are beyond 2019. So does it mean that we have come out of all the crises? Does it mean really that aviation is now going again like 2019 in one direction? I think we have to pause and think about it, because we shouldn't be making the same mistakes. We shouldn't be thinking that everything is rosy and everything can only go to one direction at this moment. Yes, I think we can be very happy that all those doomsdayers who were telling a lot of stories about how people will not travel after COVID, how the business travel is going to go and sunk, nothing like that has happened. I never believed in it. I always was vehemently against that. And yeah, me and many others were absolutely right. People want to fly, people want to travel. And I think we have seen that very much last summer, but even more so this summer. And also in the island of Rhodes, as far as I understand, you are exceeding already in tourism to 2019 levels. So So this is definitely a very good background. But, and we can say that aviation is back and tourism is back. But are we really in the safe waters or winds? Traffic is good, but so are the challenges. And COVID times did not manage to bring resolution to main challenges that the aviation sector has been experiencing, is experiencing, and will be experiencing. And if these challenges are not really addressed, that becomes a big issue also for the future growth. So what are these challenges? I mean, first, I would say, yeah, the question I already asked and kind of answered, is recovery a reality? I think the answer is yes. As said, people want to fly, which is substantiated with all the data. People want to, I would say, compensate what they were deprived of during the COVID times. And that's why we have also seen a very strong demand. But we are also in a very unique economic situation. And I don't think that I'm an economist, and I don't think that I can really picture from the last decades an economic situation which is similar to that. Starting from the fact that Europe has not experienced after the Second World War, with a short period of during the oil crisis in the 70s, inflation of these levels, which go far beyond what was meant to be the reference inflation, for example, for the uptaking of euro. We also have interest rates which we have not seen for more than a decade, where most people, even businesses, were thinking about that interest rates, negative interest rates is actually business as usual. Well, it isn't. Actually, we are back to what is normal, but this is also very much eroding the profitabilities, but it's also at the same time also eroding the disposable income of the people. And that, of course, would mean that with the current economic uncertainties, the fact that we have a very strong demand today is also due to the issues that people still have disposable income from the COVID times. But this is going to erode pretty fast. And where we are in 6 months, or where we are in 1 year, is something that is very difficult to answer. I think there are some positive signs, but at the same time, we also know that what we are experiencing in the economy, in Europe in particular, has not really been internalized in the real economy as such. And I think this is definitely something that needs to be kept in mind, whatever kind of plans are made and whatever kind of estimates are made for the future. We have also seen that the prices of the air tickets have gone up significantly, which has, of course, been a good news for airlines, which is also good news for the operators in the aviation sector as a whole. But average 35% of increase of the air tickets is, of course, something where you would ask the question whether this is economically sustainable for the traveling public. And there, again, I don't think that we should expect that the answer is only yes. I think that we should be very well aware of the challenges that we are facing. Now, moving from this recovery and the potential future to the next point is probably the biggest long-term challenge that the aviation sector is facing. And this is about the sustainability. The issue of sustainability is, for the sector, the license to grow. Some would even go that far to say the license to exist. It is without any doubt the single biggest challenge that the aviation sector, and also to that respect, tourism sector, is facing. There is very strong societal demand. There is also an expectation. There is also very strong political demand and expectation. And failure to bring down or make aviation more sustainable and to bring down the environmental impact of aviation will, of course, have detrimental effects. And this is something, of course, where the sector itself, especially when it comes to the airlines, have gone wrong. Where, for example, the airports for many, many years were working on their sustainability plans. The airlines were still very much enjoying being the business of freedom and not needing to do anything because people would understand that we are only 2%. Only 2%, I would say 2%, that's a lot. And that was something that was missed many, many years ago, which now has put aviation into a situation where they do have a perception problem. And the perception problem is very, very serious. The other thing is also whatever you do, you are always on offensive You're always on defensive and not offensive. Even if the airlines, even if the aviation sector is doing something good, they will be always said, well, it's not enough, because now you have to defend what you haven't been doing in the past. The problem is that now, when we are back to the traffic of 2019, the emissions are going to surpass the 2019 levels, which will add actually to the injury, meaning that there will be a lot of politicians, different societal groups, which will be asking aviation, what did you do for the last 4 years? What did you do during the time of the COVID? You didn't make yourself more sustainable. We know that the answer is not that simple, because it is a sector where making the sector more sustainable is extremely difficult, as is, by the way, the maritime sector. So there are no quick fixes. There are no great sort of fast movements. We just, I think, need to realize it, but that is not what the society wants to hear. And there are also those who would like to see aviation more sustainable, but many who say that would actually like to see aviation cease to exist. There are a lot of hardcore green representatives who actually do not want to see aviation to become sustainable. They want people not to fly at all. They would like to ban the flights. And this is something that is a reality that we need to face. Yes, this is more present in Europe, but don't forget that it is getting traction more and more also in the other parts of the world. And another thing, we have very much focusing on the CO2 emissions. And cutting the CO2 emissions in aviation is, you know, the talk of the trade. But again, I think the sector has to be very careful, because CO2 emissions, in a way, is a bit of yesterday. There are new things coming up, of course, like the non-CO2 emissions, which are getting more and more traction, and which will definitely have another impact on the way how aviation is seen performing environmentally. Not talking about noise and using, for example, noise for actions which are totally ununderstandable. What is happening in Schiphol Airport, for example, what the Dutch authorities are doing, this is just absolutely unacceptable. By cutting the movements from 500,000 to 440,000 without any visible reason at the time when there is a strong demand, is something where you see how the politicians are actually giving in to the pressure of the fact that the aviation is not sustainable enough. We can talk a lot about the long-term aspirational goals, flight past 2050s, market-based measures, emission trading schemes, but they are all very complicated. What many people want to hear and want to know, of course, are simple answers. And these simple answers are not easy to come. It's never too late. The sector itself needs to get together. There is not airports against the airlines or the ANSPs. Everybody is in the same plane, and everybody in that plane has also been the one who is pushing this sustainability narrative strongly further. Yes, we do have the sustainable aviation fuels, and yes, we are saying that by 2050 we will be able to abate 63% of the CO2 emissions. But today, sustainable aviation fuels constitute 0.1% roughly of all the jet fuel used. There is a long way to go, and this is something that's not going to make a change in the next 5 years. But the change has to be there, or at least there has to be a credible path in the next 5 years, how to bridge the gap, and how to address the societal expectations. The next big challenge, where also things are in a way getting worse, is the available capacity in many aspects. First, everybody knows that, especially now with the demand, and but when I also have the replacement of the fleets, the availability of aircraft has become an issue globally. The aircraft manufacturers are not able to deliver, the engine manufacturers are not able to deliver as much as there is the demand for the new aircrafts. The other thing is also, how is that also going to be seen in the context for the new kind of financial concepts like the taxonomy? How much is possible to consider the replacement as a green process, which is very important, especially for financing the change of fleets and bringing more and better performant aircraft in the markets. And like I also heard today from Michael, that even the issue about the seats in the aircraft has become an issue which, of course, affects the potential of having more capacity in the market. The other big problem, and I've said that for me it's the biggest problem, is airports. What I mean by that is that the airports are getting saturated very much, especially in Europe. It's not so much an issue of the US or Asia or Middle East, but in Europe it is a real issue. And as we see from the example of Schiphol, their potential is huge. They can do easily 750,000 movements. They were capped already for 500, and they are now wanting to be capped to 440. You actually reduce the available capacity even further because of the political pressures. Try to build a new runway in Europe. Well, try to build a new airport in Europe. Almost impossible. The Poles are trying, but I'm not very optimistic about that. New runway is almost impossible. You have night curfews. You have all kinds of restrictions. But at the same time, there will be more flights. There will be more people who want to fly. But at the same time, the question is, where are they going to land? What is the easy solution there? Well, I believe that there is going to be more developments in relation to the secondary and tertiary airports, which also means that the airlines will have to bring more point-to-point to these airports. And the hub airports have to definitely, airlines who use the hub airports have definitely to adjust their business models at the same time. But it is a big issue. It's also related to the sustainability aspect. I think airports in that sense have been very successful in bringing out what they are doing for sustainability, but it is also easier. You can easily replace all the ground machines, ground vehicles to being non-zero emission or low carbon or whatever, while you of course cannot do that with the aircraft. But nevertheless, it will not give them the license to expand, which is really a big issue. ANSPs, another issue about the challenges that we have on the capacity. We know that, last year was a disaster. This year it has been better perhaps than feared, but it is far from what is satisfactory. And making more available capacity in the air is also a huge challenge. At the same time, I believe that there the solution is only technology. With a wider use of better technological systems, digital solutions, AI, it is possible to increase the efficiencies in the air. And this is definitely something that is going to make a difference. And of course, last but not least, slots. Something that the airlines never want to talk about and something that the airports are always very happy to talk about. But it is fact that the current 80-20 rule is not sustainable. You cannot have 20% unused slots for the purpose of flexibility. Of course you need the flexibility, but this needs to be better calibrated, because at the time when you are restricting movements, at the time when the airports are very much operating on the verge of the capacity that they can afford, maintaining empty slots of that magnitude is something that I, at least personally, have never considered an option for the future, and something which deserves a very, very deep discussion. Of course, I know that when I say that to Willy, then he is not very happy about that. But I did go to the IATA HQ, and I did give a long speech there, and I did mention that as well. And I think that everybody should be open to that discussion, because this is for the future of aviation, and that is something which will help aviation. Next challenge, open and competitive markets. Well, in Europe, we have to be proud. We have the single European aviation area, probably the world's most sophisticated open market, which encompasses more than 30 countries. But we should never be complacent. This also needs to be constantly developed further. Why do we have so many people flying in Europe also? Why do we used to have at least affordable prices? It is because of the competition. I like competition. I like open markets. I think this is the one which actually brings benefits to the societies, to the businesses, and last but not least, and most importantly, to the people themselves. But we need to keep them open. We should not also on the regulatory side never give in to the calls of more protectionism, which we hear here and there. And I do believe that this is something where Europe has been very successful internally, but we need to continue to be successful also externally. In the last years, we have negotiated and signed unique aviation agreements, which nobody thought are to be possible. We have been able to sign the agreement with a groundbreaking agreement with Qatar. We have last year in November signed signed finally, and which is currently in force, the agreement between the European Union and the Southeast Asian countries, ASEAN, which altogether means 37 countries, which is the second largest agreement that has ever been made after the Chicago Convention in 1944, and which opens up the market for the third and fourth freedom to 1.1 billion people. This is something where we have been good, and there is much more to do, but are we getting there? At the same time, our experience with the single European aviation area is also an experience that can be replicated elsewhere in the world. I am particularly thinking about Africa, because the single African air transport market has been 30 years more of a talk than anything else. But this is something which is hindering the growth in Africa. I think Europe has a lot to offer in terms of how to get there, and I hope that the push which is now there can also make a bit of a difference, because we also need much more thriving aviation in that particular continent, which is probably today most or least developed when it comes to aviation and it comes to open markets. So I believe these are extremely important steps how to push further. I do believe that also the trends of the global protectionism are actually worrying. We also know that Europe, for example, in this term is much more open than the United States and many other parts of the world, but at the same time, as long as we do have the agreements between ourselves which open up the market and which also give us a legal framework to operate, then I think we are in a good path. And of course, on this, there is something which is a rudiment that it is almost impossible to understand for anybody which has got brains, and this is the issue of ownership and control. Why the hell do we have these restrictions in aviation? It is something where no other industry is having ownership and control restrictions, and I would even say that with all due respect to aviation industry, which I love and respect a lot, there are much more sensitive industries in the world which do not have these kind of restrictions. This is depriving the movement of capital. This is something which actually is not good for the airlines. And I do believe that this is something which dates back to the 50 years and should be put in the dustbin of the history. But, well, we are not there. And of course, we also need the point-to-point airlines on a regional basis and beyond, because they are the ones also who are putting a lot of competition to the market. In Europe, the growth which has been generated in the last 10 years has been exclusively generated by the point-to-point airlines. Today, for example, in Europe, in the European airspace, Ryanair is flying one day more flights than Lufthansa, Air France and KLM combined. And this is good. The more there are flights, the better. The yields are, of course, different from one company to the other. But again, if people want to fly, the options are there. I think this is something we need to protect and make sure that this is also serving us well in the future. I'd also like to mention the new business models, which is another challenge. Of course, there are new kids on the block, so to say. The innovative air mobility or urban air mobility, as we know, which brings to the market fully electric flying devices, as I would put them, will of course have will bring a change in the low altitude airspace. How it is going to be related and linked with the conventional aviation is something which I think is a good and interesting question. But I think that also for the commercial aviation, it is important to embrace as much as possible the newcomers and make them part of the overall aviation ecosystem and also open up the opportunities there. And of course, with that, we will see more the electrical aircrafts in the market, which are ultra short haul purposes today. I mean, 10-seater, fine. In 5 years, maybe 30-seater hybrid aircrafts, but they are still very much in the niche market. And of course, at the same time, will be also new players in the aviation system. I do believe that there is also a lot to happen is related to the ticketing and especially the multimodal ticketing. Avia Rail, for example, is something where there is a lot of development, especially when in Europe at least there is a political preference towards the rail sector. So aviation sector in a way has also to embrace that. And I also believe that we are seeing already, and we are going to see more and more of the ACMI services which are being provided by the specific companies focusing on that, which today already is actually helping a lot many of the airlines to fly the, let's say, less intense routes, and also help in some cases also with the feeding. And of course, there are many other interesting things to observe, whether we will ever see a low-cost long-haul to succeed. Some people have doubts, rightly so. I believe that this is also something that we will see in the future to come. And of course, this would mean that there are a lot of changes in the next, I would say, 10 years and beyond, probably more than we have seen in the last 10 years in terms of the aircraft design, in terms of the way how the aircrafts are powered, and in terms of the way how some new business models are being developed. And of course, what is key in all that is that all the different organizations, all the different players will work together. This has been actually a deficiency in the sector. I believe that the sector needs to step up its effort. There are common challenges. Some of them, of course, are different from which angle you come from, but in the end of the day, they are all covered by one umbrella, which is called the aviation sector. And this sector is a key. It's a key for people to discover new places. It's a key to people to see their loved ones, to see their relatives, to travel the world. And we want this sector not only to exist, we want this sector to thrive, and we want this sector also of being a driver of the good as well as the driver of the growth in the future. I believe that that is the reason why we are all here, and that is the reason why we care about what we are doing, and also why we care about the people who are so deeply rooted in this fantastic industry. So let's hope that the challenges will find solutions, and let's hope that we will have plenty of opportunities also in the future to discuss and to take this sector further and make the globe a better place to live. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Holloway, for the high level of information you provided us. We understood that we have a long way in front of us to solve the problems, and that the key is to work together. I ask now Mr. Glyn Hughes. I'm sorry if I'm not pronouncing good your...
Close enough.
It's okay. Mr. Glyn is Director General of the International Air Cargo Association, and I ask to come up to the stage for a keynote.
Thank you very much. You did well with my name. My wife has called me much worse. Vice Mayor, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, it's a pleasure for me to speak to you today. Thank you, Kostas, for inviting me. And I know you're all asking one question. Why is a cargo guy talking to us when we're talking about tourism and aviation? And I think it's because of what Henrik was saying, which is it's an aviation system, it's international, it's commercial aviation, and air cargo has a fundamental role to play in that together with the passenger side of the business. 50% of the cargo business moves in the bellies of those wonderful passenger aircraft. So let me just talk a little bit about TIACO just for 30 seconds. We're a horizontal trade association. By horizontal, I don't mean we sleep during the day. I mean that it's actually across the entire industry. So you have organizations like ACI, like IATA, like Canso, etc., which represent the vertical aspects, whereas we represent all sectors across the whole industry. Just some numbers, and I'm actually going to quote some of my favorite numbers, and this is from an IATA report. I used to work for IATA, so I know this is one number that was accurate. Not everything that comes out is accurate, but this number is accurate. That in 2019, the value that the global economy earned from inbound tourism globally was $850 billion. That same year, the value that those same economies benefited from, the value of cargo that flew in the bellies of the planes and the main decks of the freighters, was $6.4 trillion. It was 8 times more valuable to the global economy, which is why it's crucial that when we talk about things like sustainability, about slots, about people, about the preservation of the industry, it's crucial that we talk about both what's below deck and above deck. I'd also like to start with a 2019 story, but from a different perspective. The air cargo industry in 2019 was in a severely depressed state. It was coming off of some globally challenging times where you had the US in a trade dispute with China, the US with the EU with China, and it really meant that there was very little cargo moving around. With all that wonderful capacity, because the passenger business was doing so well, yields were basically as depressed as they had ever been for cargo. And then 2020 happened, and about 80% of the passenger network was grounded at a point where the whole world needed PPE, it needed food, it needed supplies that they couldn't get locally or through any other means. As borders closed on the ground, you could fly over the borders. So air cargo mobilized like it had never done before. There are about 2,500 dedicated freighter aircraft. And during the early days of COVID, there were another 2,500 passenger aircraft that were actually commandeered for cargo-only operations. A lot of the seats were stripped out, cargo was put in there. You take a 777, you could actually put about 5,000 boxes of PPE on the seats, in the overhead compartments, under the seats, in the toilets, in the galleyway. Everywhere there was space, you could actually put a box of cargo. So 2020, 2021, we had the most phenomenal time for air cargo. Yields were through the roof. Airlines that were dedicated to cargo were making a lot of money, which was helping to keep the aviation sector flowing, with particularly some airlines that didn't have a cargo product. Then, unfortunately, early 22, and we had the outbreak of the war in Ukraine, and it really impacted so many other aspects. As inflation hit, the consumer became cautious, and the air cargo fortunes actually really started to deteriorate. I'll talk about that a little bit more in a minute, but one of the key things that we have to do more as an industry, air cargo now, is actually promote the value and the benefits that air cargo brings. When you look at the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, air cargo supports a huge number of those, enabling countries to get their products to market. So when you have a global connectivity that the passenger network is providing, plus dedicated freighter connectivity, you've got a great ecosystem and infrastructure to help those least developed countries prosper to a greater degree by getting their products to market. Just some simple comparisons. Passenger transport impacts about 10% of the global population in terms of regular travelers, those who can afford and travel regularly. Cargo that moves impacts about 80% of the global population, whether or not it's products that they actually are involved in producing and moving, or actually consuming at the other end. So it's important to keep that infrastructure open up as well. It's also crucial when airlines are opening up new passenger routes. It can be supplemented by cargo supporting thinner yields until the route actually gets heavily developed. And it's also an interesting aspect that whilst we're seeing a downturn in consumer activity now, one of the bigger competition, or one of the biggest competitors to air cargo right now, is actually passenger travel. People have had a tough time over the last 3 years. They've not gone on holiday, but they have found they've got some discretionary income. And what they're not doing is spending their money on new cars, new phones, new domestic appliances. They're saying, we're going to have a holiday. So as passenger numbers are going up, cargo or products that are normally traveling by air cargo are not being bought. Like Henrik saying that this may not carry on for too much longer. Next year, we may not see such buoyant passenger travel, but we will hopefully see the resurgence of strong consumer activity. We do continue to expect to see going forward the air cargo sector providing very positive growth in a number of areas pharmaceuticals, fresh products, for example. E-commerce is continuing to grow at double digits. Plus, as the China plus one or China plus two strategies become employed, the G7 recently announced that they wanted to de-risk supply chains, which was effectively moving us away from China only. China accounts for about 28% of global production today. So if we see that some of that production is moved to secondary sites like Vietnam, Malaysia, other parts of Southeast Asia, because of, for example, that great trade pact or the aviation pact that's come in, air cargo, and I have to congratulate you here because air cargo got some special privileges in there. Unlimited number of operations. Usually it's maxed the same as passenger. Fifth freedom, which allows the carriers, European carriers, to have domestic transport rights within the 10 Asian states and vice versa. So it will actually promote and encourage further air cargo growth. One of the other things as well, I just wanted to come a little bit closer to home with our wonderful hosts in Greece. Lovely, it's my first time in Rhodes, it's spectacular. Although I have to say to Costas, to make us get dressed from that beautiful water to come here, that's cruel, my friend, that is very cruel. But a wonderful location. But Greece, as we know it, is a tourist destination, but it still exports over $20 billion worth of goods via air. That's just via air, even with the great shipping background and heritage that Greece has got. So air cargo can support both developing nations, manufacturing nations, tourist-based nations. It has a role to play in every aspect of global society and global community. Also congratulate Greece that the World Bank publishes every 2 years an analysis based on the assessment of in fact, they call it the Logistics Performance Indicator. And it's a measure of tests as to border facilitation, efficiency of customs, to the degree of which digitalization is employed, the ability to track, to trace, infrastructure, training, workforce. And Greece stands at 19 in the world, which is actually a very, very good score. If you look at the list above, you've got exceptional trading nations like Singapore, like Germany, for example, who set the bar, but Greece is actually very close. So congratulations to having a focus on trade as well as focus on tourism. I know time is short, so I'm actually going to conclude with a couple of things about some of the challenges, first of all, and also talk about sustainability. Henrik talked about the open skies. Liberalization is crucial for air cargo. Passengers, most of the time, have a two-way journey, unless something goes wrong and they miss their flight and they decide, I'll stay where I moved to. Cargo is unidirectional. It flies from A to B, which means if you're an asset operator, an airline, you have to find creative ways to get your plane that may have been full of cargo going from point A to point B back to point A to pick up more cargo. You don't want to fly it back empty. So you might have to fly from point B to C to D to E. You might have to be very creative, zigzagging around the world so you have the least number of dead legs within that journey. The only way we can do that is a very open, transparent economic regime of total liberalization. So one thing that we do as TIACA is working with partner organizations to try and educate the international authorities as much as possible that connectivity with liberalized, particularly air cargo services, can really help prosper and grow economic prosperity. Another aspect, of course, is, as was talked about, is as an industry, we are under attack, and I think we should use strong terms. We are under attack from people. There is a politician in Belgium, I won't mention his name or his role, but he's the Minister of Transport, I believe, but I won't mention his name. And he said he's flown once in his life. Twice in his life, and he regrets it. Now, he says, I regret it. I wish I could take that back. Now, I'm not sure that's a good qualification for a Minister of Transport, but it also means that he's not open to the value that transportation brings, connecting people, connecting economies, connecting communities. It's the way that we integrate, we can actually secure lifelong understanding of other parts of the globe. International trade would not happen if it wasn't for that connectivity. So it's important that we do fight those type of biases. We also have to fight the bias against night flights, night bans, curfews, impact air cargo much more dramatically, whereas passengers don't often want to catch a flight at 2 a.m. The integrators and the all-freighter networks, it's crucial for them to be able to fly throughout the night whenever is necessary. So there's a lot of challenges that we have to tackle with regards to the sustainability topic. We focus as well, not just on the direct aspects, which is the reducing of emissions, because I agree with Henrik, we've got a lot of catching up to do. We have to focus a lot more on what's happening today. There's a lot of electrification within the air cargo sector. Airports have done a tremendous job and continue to do a job, and I think they're leading the way. We need to do more on the aviation side. But we also need to focus on the value and the benefits of responsible emissions. Because I think if we counter the argument when somebody says, I want to do away with the aviation sector, we should then say, okay, well, who's going to tell the 100 million families in Latin America, in Southeast Asia, in Africa, who are actually growing fresh produce, who are putting food on their table, who are sending their children to school because they are growing and manufacturing wonderful products, fresh products that we want here in Europe. So yes, there are emissions. We need to reduce the impact of those, but we also need to look at our role in society. So I think we have a lot more to do there. Kostas, I don't know if you're going to talk about IAF, but I think Kostas needs to be congratulated for trying to, as you had mentioned, bring all the interested parties together and say that we need to put aside biases. We do not help ourselves if in public forums with the media that we attack each other. All that does is it gives food and ammunition to those people who want to attack the industry. We need to say that there are no airports without airlines. There are no airlines without airports. There are no airline airports without air navigation service providers, without ticketing agents, without transport on the ground to get into there. We need the concessionaires. We need everybody associated with this entire community. And therefore, we need to work together to try and promote the value. So I think the International Aviation Forum is a wonderful mechanism to actually try and promote that. So congratulations to you for that work. With that, I'm actually going to finish there. The one thing I know about cargo, when you talk to an audience, is there's three things about up, which is you should stand up, you should speak up, and then I should shut up. So I'm doing the third up now. I've had enough. I'm going to sit down, and thank you very much, Kostas.
Thank you very much, Mr. Glynn. We usually don't hear much about air cargo, and thank you for the information, especially about the data of the Greece performance. Thank you very much. So I ask now Dr. Kostas Iatrou for the OPS Awards to come up to the stage.
Thank you, Yannis. From last year, we have started a tradition to recognize the operation side of the air transport industry, because, you know, we do our awards over the years, but it's very important to recognize also on the operation side. We heard from our keynote speakers already how important it is on the operation, and this year we have 3 awards, and we'll start first with the organization award. That this year will go to TIACA, and you have seen that how important is cargo in the aviation chain. Also during COVID times, transportation of vaccine, transportation of masks that we all urgently needed to survive. And then after the vaccines was critical, and cargo play a role. Even, you know, even myself, I started buying stuff from the internet, then they were coming faster with an airplane than any other means of transportation during the time that we couldn't move outside home because we had curfew or lockdowns. Therefore, Glynn, I think, presented TIACA presence on the aviation chain that always sometimes is behind the scenes, but it's also critical for the well-function of the modern societies. Then I will ask Glynn to come and accept the award on behalf of TIACA. Let's go here in front.
Thank you.
One more, beginning. Of course.
Just thank you very much for this. This is a great honor, although this actually now causes me another problem, because if you notice where we were taking the picture, behind us is that scene. I'm going to have to explain to my office that I was in a very tough environment. We were inside, there were no windows, it was talking business, aviation for two Okay, so there'll be a picture of me with long flowing hair and no background. Then they'll know it's fake. No, Constance, thank you so much for this because, as I mentioned, air cargo has quite often been a silent part of this industry. It's sad to say that during COVID, when so many lives were negatively impacted, that it actually did help raise the profile of air cargo. And we want to play a pivotal role going forward in helping maintain that aspect and playing our role in an integrated aviation community. So thank you very much for this. Thank you.
I always say that aviation exists from many crazy people more than a century ago that they had a dream to fly. Then aviation is linked with people. People are making this business great. Without people, aviation does not exist. And it's important to recognize those people that really contribute to our industry. And this year we have two personal awards. First is to, both are very good friends, but are also personalities in aviation. The first is Katalin Rado, is the Director General of Aviation Administration of Kazakhstan. Before he will join here in the stage, I want to say a few words about Katalin. Katalin is a personality in aviation, having different roles in his career, not only now running successfully and transforming Kazakhstan from last year that took office, but in the past was President of ECAC, Director General of Civil Aviation of Romania. By the way, I'm searching if there is another Director General, was in two different countries Director General. And he made a successful also career in ICAO headquarters in Montreal, and really deserve a big applause because he contributes so much about aviation. And I will ask Katalin to join.
Thank you.
Thank you. Great honor and pleasure. Also, it's important for me to acknowledge the fantastic organization here in the beautiful island of Rhodes and the big effort made by the local municipality, the local government, together with Kostas, Yanis, and all involved in this beautiful setup. It's an honor to be for the second time in Rhodes to experience the beautifulness of this part of the world. After harsh winters in Montreal and Kazakhstan, in Astana, being here, it's really amazing. But we will talk later on about tourism and how aviation has impacted over the years tourism and how linked are together. It's also an honor to represent this time another country, Kazakhstan, that trusted me with bringing their aviation to the maturity. And also I want to acknowledge here the big support of Henry Colole and his team in Brussels that really make things happen and help states and region to develop and become more and more better. Thank you, Kostas, for this amazing award. It's an honor and I'm humbled to receive this. Thank you once again.
And the last but not least, as already Katalin mentioned, Henry Colole is a person that changed aviation a lot and helped make aviation really better. In his role in the Commission, you know that Henrik was the Director General for DG Move. Then his portfolio was covering all means of transportation. But he put aviation in the right dimension, in the right direction. Unfortunately, before Henrik, we didn't have any Director General or rarely visible Director General participating in any event we organize in ICAO, ACI, IATA, whatever. Henrik was and is and will continue to be visible, helping aviation to improve. He made the possible the impossible. He signed landmark open skies, is a believer about the united Europe. We cannot be more European than Henrik in the Commission. He fight with the shirt, as we say in the football, because he's really a European citizen. He's a European person and also managed to have these landmark open skies with more, I believe, than one of the top of his career, as I remember we were talking, the EU-ASEAN Open Skies, that is a landmark open skies, among others, and of course in the operation with all his efforts promoting in aviation in all aspects. And I think he put really well the scene in his keynote address. And I would like to ask Henrik to join here to accept the award. Here in front for the...
Well, thank you very much, Kostas, for your incredibly kind words.
Honest words.
Nevertheless, very kind. And I'm very humbled and privileged by having this recognition and receiving this together with Glenn and Katalin, very, very deserving persons. I have been also extremely lucky. Over the last 13 years, I have had the pleasure of working with the people from the aviation sector, also other transport sectors, but everybody who knows me knows that my heart was always in aviation and continues to be. It is full of incredible people doing an incredible job and really making a difference in the world. I'm very happy that I have been recognized among them, and there are so many other people who also deserve this important recognition. So once again, thank you for sharing this moment, and Kostas, thank you very much.
I can ask the three awardees to take a picture here together with their awards. Zoran, congratulations.
Congratulations. Congratulations.
So now it's time for our leaders panels. I ask Mr. Dr. Michael Kerkloch, board member of Lufthansa, to moderate the first panel and to present the members of the first panel. Michael? Coming.
Shall I speak here?
Yes.
Okay.
You have the names of the...
Yeah. So, if everybody is ready now,
for a truly ATN journey. It's a worldwide journey. We will, in our next panel, touch 4 continents, if you may be aware of that. We will start in Croatia. We will then go to Kazakhstan. We will have a touchdown in Brazil. As far as I do in the end, no. And of course, last but not least, we will go to Africa, the whole of Africa. So 4 continents. And I really do welcome Jasmin Bajic, the CEO of Croatian Airlines. In the end, Katalin, if you are still able to speak after you got this reward. And of course, Fadi, or her real name is Fadimatu Nuchemo Simon from Cameroon, but sort of, I think, representing the whole of Africa today, huh? Won't you? And Michal Novak, he in the end is Polish citizen, but he's truly global, Polish citizen, but living in the Netherlands, representing a company from Brazil. A warm welcome to you all. I will come next to you. So we'll have this journey, and as this aviation forum is of course also intending, or has a secret message, you all have to learn something. I hope after this panel you'll be wiser than before. And I'm pretty sure that we will learn quite a lot of some unknown territories we're not really aware of that they exist and what they really do. But we start with Croatia. And which is, in this year, we were talking about tourism, one of the rising stars. I don't know whether you have followed the development of tourism in this year, or especially the Mediterranean. And Croatia, I sometimes get the impression it's not as big as Spain, but it's the new Spain. Yeah? Also as far as the prices are concerned. But everybody's fond of Croatia. Small country in the end, about 2 million.
3.5 million.
3.5 million inhabitants. And in the end, a successful member of the European Union. And Jasmin Bajic, by the way, he's Croatian is existing, I think, in 25 years, 29 years, 30,
35 years.
35 years, and has been with Air Croatia 29 years, so he knows it from the scratch. But he has a history before, because he was also in the organizing committee of the Olympic Games in Sarajevo. And he learned a lot there with dealing with international organizations and the world.
And that's my connection with Greece, you know. So Greece is the origin of
the Olympic Games.
Olympic Games. So that's the also connection.
Yeah, those were in those times were really successful games.
Yes, really successful.
And then when he started his career with Croatia Airlines. And in the end, it is, maybe you just explain a little bit about Croatian Airlines. What we are all interested to know is, why does it still exist? Yeah, because it's so small. Yeah, and
yes.
What are your secrets, success factors? Well, bringing it to a status it has now. I mean, you don't have so many aircraft. I think, what is it, 13, 14, 15, something like that?
Yes.
Yeah. A320 fleet. You will probably change. And ATRs you have as well?
No, Q400.
Q400s, yeah.
Yes.
And you will change with
All the
the
fleet.
whole fleet to no more, but you can
Single time.
explain that. And I would also like you to explain a little bit about this rise of Croatia right now, what tourism has to do with it, and the airline.
Okay, thank you for introduction. First of all, I will congratulate organizers for this fantastic event, and thanks Kostas for calling me to be part of this event. And I'm very proud that I'm here. So first of all, Croatia Airlines is a small regional European country, and I am member of the board of European Regional Airline Association. That's also a thing from which I know Henrik.
He probably fought
yes.
you all the time, didn't he?
Yes, we are discussing all the time, you know. So that's normal, you know. So different opinions. That's something we have to support. So Croatia Airlines, small regional airline with 13 aircraft still now, and we are coming back after the COVID. Now this year we have fantastic results. I don't remember when we have financial first 6 months positive financially, so that happened this year, and for sure this year we will finish in black after several years and after
Without
COVID.
tricks? Without tricks?
Without any tricks, you know. So I was surprised when ladies from my accounting came to me. So I was expecting for the 9 months that we will be positive, you know. So, but it happens. That helps, you know. So even those increase in prices and everything what's happening on the market and strong demand that we have in Croatia. But let's start maybe from 2019 and 20, you know, so because that's important for the story of our airline. Yeah. Next year, as I told you, we will celebrate 35 years of Croatia Airlines, 20 years in Star Alliance. We are very proud as we are smaller part of smaller airline in the biggest alliance in the world. And in 2019, we are government-owned company with now we have close to 850 employees, and we have also we are government-owned. And in 2019, government start with process of privatization, and together with consultants, there was 2 candidates, one from Greece, Aegean, and second from Spain, Air Nostrum. And they are doing due diligence in February 2020, and then we know what happened, came COVID. And from 15th of March 2020, all other carriers which were flying to Croatia stopped flights. Croatia Airlines was the only carrier who was flying that time. We enabled more than 30,000 people, Croatians, to come back. They are all around the world when COVID started. We did repatriation flights. We did cargo flights also, you know, so with passenger train with medical protective goods, you know, so from several times we did it. We helped our government to find a way, and with Lufthansa helped us at that time we have one quantity of those medicals in Shanghai, and CEO of Lufthansa helped us connect us with the cargo director in Singapore for Asia. So Lufthansa helped us that quantities to come, you know, that was for us crucial, and help you, and thank you once again for that. That means very much for even my wife is doctor, you know, so so for her is also important that, and for a lot of people. So that we did repatriation flight of Chinese sports youngsters which were in Croatia, with one stop in Kazakhstan at that time from Zagreb, and vice versa, we flew with us, you know, so some diplomats from China come back to Europe. What happened during the COVID and during the 2020 summer season, you know, we are a tourist country. We do not have during the summer lockdown. It was very light measures in Croatia, and it's possible to come. So we were flying and enable tourists to come even in that year, which is terrible for tourism and for transport. So, and that shows that we are not only, so commercial activity, we are important part of Croatian traffic infrastructure. So that's something which our government is aware of. And in 2021, after first, everything what happened, we survived. In 21, we started with the Boston Consulting Group to develop our post-COVID strategy to see how we will live after on these days, so we are now facing. And they did a very good job through Teams and Zoom and those tools we were using at that time. And there was one kind of, there was more than 12 strategic initiatives. One was on performance, to improve our cost side and the revenue side. And other direction is for the measures and strategic initiatives about structural changes of network and fleet. So then we made decision that we will go to single type fleet. And after that, in 2022, Michael is one of the candidates. It was a battle between Airbus and Embraer, and I really appreciate colleagues did very good, so they gave us fantastic offers.
But he still has his job.
Yes.
But I still haven't recovered.
And so we decide Airbus A220s, and we in next 4 years we will have 50. Yes, we will change all our fleet to single type to 15 A220s.
So you will be the Southern Air Baltic.
Yes,
something
like that.
Yeah.
Or
but smaller.
European Delta.
Okay,
60 of them.
Yeah. But one of my questions still comes to my mind is, as the airline is very small. Yes. You are of course a member of Starlines. That's very good.
Of course.
But do you see a future for an airline as small as such, or is it very much dependent? The success that Croatia Airlines has is very much dependent, maybe also on some protectionist measures of the Croatian government? I know it's a tough question. But
it's always a tough question. That's something we are also, we have to be aware that we are 0.0 something, so in European traffic. We do not hurt anyone with competition, so it's not possible. But of course, we all the measures, all the let's say constraints that have for states aid is not permitted. We are aware of that, and that's not the case, so now with us. But for the future, we do not. Now our government will wait for fleet replacement, and after that to start privatization process.
Again.
Okay. Yeah. But they with intention to keep some portion and some influence on company, on connectivity, because there are important connectivity, for example, within the region, which is not what happened in Slovenia after Adria Airways failed. No one is flying, from Ljubljana to Skopje, to Tirana, to Sarajevo, where Slovenia as a country have investments, so there is a need for travel. There are a lot of investments, everything, so jobs, and that's connectivity is really, really important. And Southeast Europe region, so Balkan, so is always problematic. Yes. But one of the main things, what is problem? It's transport connectivity is very bad. If you are going, for example, from Zagreb to Bucharest with train, you need 24 hours. So that's the case. So I was last month talking with one of the ministers in Slovenia, and he told me they calculated how much they are losing as a country without airline. And in that calculation,
Yes.
only few % of that amount will be enough for, let's say, small airline to keep existing.
I know it may be a little bit provocative now, but there is of course a case in the Balkans that you say, yeah, where a change of governmental thinking as far as the aviation development is concerned has led to a huge increase in traffic, and that's Albania. Yeah. I mean, of course, they don't have significant domestic airline, but the former policy was, of course, high price, high level, and to a little extent milk the cow they had, yeah. But the real traffic development now comes with just a totally different policy, and it is exploding at the moment. Depends, of course, a little bit on what the government thinks what is good for the whole tourism sector. Maybe also not overheating it. That's
All the time I have pressure from them to fly to Tirana, So, but there is no demand, enough to
well, they sometimes of course create
establish,
demand.
so profitable operation. From my perspective, the best way, so is some kind of public service obligation, so to have some connectivities which is important and which is crucial for the regions. Like we have in Greece, for example, have we also in Croatia and France and Norway. So that's also because there is no one is flying. Only you have Belgrade, Tirana, so not Ljubljana.
That may
not
be
Ljubljana, not Zagreb, and so.
For the Bulgarians, that may be true. Is there a growth plan of Croatia Airlines, increasing the fleet significantly, so
Yes,
to serve more destinations?
Now we have 12 aircraft plus one spare, so because of aging aircraft, we need spare, so because, in these times, this year, if you have AOG, it's not, let's say, 1 day, it's 3 days, so because of lack of spare parts, problems, and everything, what we are facing now, our plan is in 4 years to have 15 aircraft. Now we will see, we signed for that, and we will replace all our, today, 12 with 15 brand new. So, and for the future, we now have plan for that, and we will plans doing rolling, so so that's the way we are doing all the time.
Okay. Thanks very much. We only have 30 minutes left. So you probably, I mean, if you would not go to Greece all the time, you maybe also go to Croatia.
Yes, yes, you are welcome. So, about tourism, to say a few words, so that now what we are facing in Croatia, that we have limits of infrastructure, so we demand in August and July. And that's the problems. We have crowded Dubrovnik, like Venice, so, and Split also. So let's say that's on the top. We need to spread, so, and to, let's say, to start season much earlier and to finish, so to have all year round tourism. That's something, so because, for example, Split Airport have 750,000 passengers in, let's say, 2 highest months, and only 30,000 during the winter. And Croatia Airlines was the only carrier which we are flying, so to Split during the winter, and Dubrovnik, of course.
That's probably the same problem in Kazakhstan, I think, as far as that is concerned. Thank you very much, Yasmin, for your Insights into Croatian Airlines. we go on to Kazakhstan. I don't know whether when you ask these people, whether they really know where it's located, or how many people live in Kazakhstan. Catalan was already introduced, so I do not go into the details. But as the Director General of Kazakhstan Civil Aviation, but he has an important agenda because they also try to reinvent themselves as far as aviation and its organization is concerned, and of course how to enhance traffic, how to develop, how to have a professional organization and a professional setup and professional regulation. Or maybe you start a little bit with explaining a little bit Kazakhstan and the aviation sector. I don't know whether you know the Kazakhstan Airlines, the two biggest Kazakhstan Airlines, probably not, maybe one, yeah. The second you do not know. And what the kind of, maybe is there a change of thinking about the Republic? It's a very, very beautiful country, but it's also very cold many months. Yeah. And of course, it's in the center of Asia, one has to say. Maybe you give us a little insight in that. Then maybe you can talk a little bit about how the which big players are in the sector, and if there is a vision, what the vision is.
Thank you, Michael, and thank you everyone for being today here. Indeed, Kazakhstan, it's the biggest country in the world with a very small population, only 19 million. However, it's a country big in resources, oil and gas, but also minerals. I think the concentration of rare metals and precious metals, it's Siberia together with northern Kazakhstan is the biggest in the world. We know that we have in Africa a lot as well, but this is where they are. So a rich country with a huge potential, but it's landlocked countries. Unless you see the Caspian Sea as a sea and not as a lake, is still a debate at this level. But nevertheless,
it's still there. It's still there.
And the biggest challenge is to make sure that together with the political willingness that exists right now, you have also implemented the right measure to make things happen, and especially in the aviation, because aviation is the future of Kazakhstan, not only linking Kazakhstan with the other parts of the world, but also internally. The cities are located in a such manner that the next big city is 1,000 kilometers plus. So the only way to address it, and as you said, it's a cold country, 6 months per year you have low temperature, sometimes a lot of snow. It's aviation. So practically there is a lot of willingness to develop aviation for serving and connecting cities inside Kazakhstan, but also connecting Kazakhstan with the world. As I said, the political willingness exists, and this is important. There are resources over there. What we need right now is to make sure that we put the right mechanism in place. AAK, the Civil Aviation Authority, being one of the players. And based on that, we right now, so the system was refurbished 4 years ago when they decided to adopt the British model and to bring aviation at the other era, coming from the past 30 years of post-communism and bring it in the new era more as an European approach, and having a strong link with Europe, because this was the indication from the highest political level of Kazakhstan. So practically right now we are in full process of modernizing the Civil Aviation Authority and working with our strong partner, with the European Commission. We have awarded a contract with the EASA for technical assistance. $6 million we invested in bringing technical knowledge and know-how from EASA, European Commission, and also from the member states, European member states. So the direction is clear. We want to be part of European system. We want to play by the EASA and ICAO rules. And this is where we are going. Of course, that bringing me on board had a good impact, as I see it, and not without being modest, but I've been in, I ran for 7 years the civil aviation of Romania, EU member state and member of EASA, but also I've been involved I was the safety director in ICAO. So I had the opportunity to see the broader aspect of how the civil aviation are playing around the world, what are the challenges and how we can make it better. I'm fortunate to have enough resources and political willingness to help me achieve my goals. But this is only a part of the system. What we have now, and I see it still like a challenge, there are two elements, in fact, to make tourism and aviation thrive there. First of all, infrastructure, because most of the airports have old infrastructure coming from the old times, so we really need investment and the governmental program to address these challenges. It's also fortunate to have no restriction in terms of public investment, and we can develop and at least address the infrastructure, safety and security infrastructure in the airports in a proper way. The second is liberalization and access to the market, because right now, despite of the efforts of the government, there are still challenges in terms of access to the market. We are just in a final steps to initialize the horizontal agreement with the European Commission. So we hope that this will happen very soon. Also,
I was very surprised that that there are only, let's say, 3 important international flights reaching Central Europe, and that's Frankfurt.
It's Frankfurt, Istanbul, and Warsaw from time to time. Yes, indeed. And
so that connectivity could really be improved. Yeah.
Exactly. So practically, this is one of the challenges that we have, and we really need to liberalize the access to the market. Just recently, a few weeks ago, we obtained for the second biggest carrier. It's a low-cost carrier. It's called SCAT, and they have around 30 aircraft. And they have obtained the TCO from EASA. That means that they could start flying to Europe. And I really believe that this will boom the traffic with Europe, and we'll have access to more destinations, and we can link Kazakhstan with Europe in a better way. But as I said, we really need a different perspective, and it's coming from the political level, but there are still challenges at the bureaucratic level. Another aspect that is not necessarily linked to aviation, it's the access of the population to come in Europe. We need visa from Kazakhstan to come in Europe. Takes a little bit of time. It's a little bit of bureaucracy, so extra burden in terms of being successful in sending people in Europe and bringing tourists in Kazakhstan. For most of the European passports, you have 30 days free, so you can enter Kazakhstan. From this point of view, Kazakhstan it's really investing in their tourism. They are trying to explore new ways to attract tourists. It's a big country, but a beautiful country. Few people know about it, and right now they are working hard. Me being part of the program to expand the Kazakhstan names abroad, especially in the aviation area. And I want to thank Kostas and the organizer for inviting me and letting you know about Kazakhstan a little bit more. But apart of that, as I said, tourism is extremely important. Kazakh people, even if it's not a big population, they have the willingness to travel. The easiest way for them is Dubai or Turkey, but they love to come here in Greece. They love to be in Europe. The challenge that we have, as I said, visa and direct flights that will be better serving the access to Greece. And from this point of view, we have started last year a direct flight with Greece, with Heraklion. But we will, right now, they are working to expand, and I think just 1 or 2 weeks ago, a delegation from our ministry came in Greece to expand the level of services between the two countries. So there are big opportunities, and I see this as one of the main factors that will facilitate access for both European going there and for Kazakh people in Central Asia.
So the perception is right that the focus is rather on, let's say, Europe, Western Europe. I mean, it's in Central Asia, and you could also develop your traffic network with China, or I don't know, with India, or the Central Asian countries, which will play a major role. India, for example, yeah. or the Gulf in future. What is your insight in that? And the second question I have is also a political one. Is there a lot of Chinese investment in Kazakhstan in infrastructure? And what is the attitude of the government or the in comparison to the traditional, let's say, more Western engagement? I mean, Russian. I don't know whether it's a Russian engagement, but Western engagement into Kazakhstan.
So practically, we are already the biggest economy in Central Asia, and right now we are pushing hard to become also the major player in aviation in Central Asia. But keep in mind that geopolitically we are very well situated, as Jasmine said. In order to sometime to go to China, you need to stop over in Kazakhstan, and it's the perfect place to be because we have natural resources that allow cheap fuel, but also the perfect position to accommodate this type of traffic. Practically, we are part of the middle corridor. We are in the middle of Europe and Asia in terms of transport of goods, and aviation can play an important role. One of the things that I discussed yesterday.
Is it a cargo hub?
Not yet, and this is the challenge that we have right now, and we discussed with Tiaka and with Glyn yesterday. Practically, it's a presidential, and president has a lot of power in Kazakhstan. It's a presidential indication and willingness to set up our national cargo carrier, but also to make Kazakhstan a hub for cargo traffic, air cargo traffic. So we will work together with Tiaka, hopefully, and with the experts, highest experts in the world to make this happen. But it's really something that we want to see developing because we have everything in our hands, and we just need to fix some issues that are, like, for example, the monopoly on some fuel supply, some liberalization and things like that need to be put in place to make this happen. But it's a big potential over there, and not only with China, but also with India, as you said, Gulf states, and so on. You can imagine that, as I said, geopolitically, the two biggest borders are with China and with Russia, so we have some challenges related to this, and the conflict in Ukraine didn't help. In fact, helped on one side, boosting our traffic and also economically speaking. But it's hard to be neighboring country with some other country that is in conflict. So it's not easy. And just recently we had to issue a restriction, in fact not a restriction, but a risk assessment for the operators in terms of flying over Russia. Due to the last aircraft that had Mr. Prigozhin on board. So you never know what's happening over there, so we need to be careful with the airline flying that route, so we work with them. However, what is also important is that, as I said, in terms of investment, we have our own resources, we are open to external resources, but surprisingly, you will not see too much Chinese investment right now in Kazakhstan. I think, and I know that it's a kind of a political reluctance to work very close to China or to allow too much investment, Chinese investment in Kazakhstan. And as I said, they have enough resources to do it by themselves, and they are putting a lot of efforts in make this happening. However, our political layer has excellent relation with Europe, United States, China, and all the big players. And from this point of view, we are very well situated to have the booming economy that we have right now, and also in the same time trying to develop a lot the air transport, both cargo and passengers.
I have another question, please, with a short answer. I mean, these societies are always known as being known, or let's say known as being very, very bureaucratic.
Yep.
But obviously there's some will for reform, at least organizational reforms. Do you have hope, I mean, now being part of that organization, that they will be successful in becoming less bureaucratic, or in inverted commas, more professional?
I think so, and the perfect
The
example.
whole organization.
Yes,
so on.
yes, because the perfect example is, for example, aviation. To put as a head of a governmental agency an expat being in charge with both security and safety means that they are really thinking to the future and they want to bring know-how from abroad and to implement the reforms that they put it on paper. Because the reform started, and if you look at the law and the system in place, looks very good. Very well, but designed. But you need people to make the system transforming and changing. You know, and this is the challenge. But at the political level, at the high political level, you have the change of the government, the change of the people there. They are looking for so-called new Kazakhstan. And I think the reform should be made in the middle management of the governmental apparatus, where bureaucracy and still some elements that are not in favor of change. This should be changed, but I see a lot of hope, and they are looking forward, and they are very strict in implementing this. It's a very autocratic society, but this has minuses and pluses. One of the added value is that whatever is decided takes very low amount of time to put it in practice, and I like it because I'm result-oriented, so I like things happen. And I remember passing a law, changing aviation law in Romania took us 3-4 years, while here can happen in 6-8 months. So it's really something that you should take advantage if you are working there, and to see how it's working. Anyway, we are in very close relation with the European Commission, with the European Union, and we are really strict in making things happen together with them and following their path.
Thanks a lot. I mean, you were talking about New Kazakhstan. New Kazakhstan. We'll have a look at New Africa now. I think I should give you.
Can I just ask a question?
Yes,
Yeah, of course.
please.
Quickly,
Yes.
unless I missed it. What is the organizational structure with your ANSP? CAA and the ANSP are structurally?
Are separated, totally
Fully
fully
separated.
separated, and we are independent. And now, just a few months ago, we became also self-financing, because until now we were financed through ANSPs, but now we became fully self-financed, so we changed the model
Big
to be
change, yeah.
total, yeah.
Thank you.
So coming to New Africa. Fadi from Cameroon. She is she's a personality. She has probably more than one personality. Yeah. Here she is as the president of the Young African Aviation Professionals Association, one of these terrible acronyms, YAPA, or whatever. But she has, of course, a long-time record with the aviation sector. She has worked, I could say, nearly all over Africa, as being in Cameroon, but all over Africa with different airlines, sometimes airline startups, which that I had never heard, like AfriJet, I must say, I never heard. AfriJet, of course, with Kronos, with Cameroon Airlines for some time. And she was always described by colleagues as being, as being a personality. She's full of ideas. I mean, you have met her already, so she's full of ideas and energy and knows how to realize things. But has focused a little bit now on, I say, young Africa, young aviation professionals in Africa. And one of her concerns is obviously that how to attract new generation for the aviation sector right at the moment and involve them. And of course also she has a concern for women in aviation, which everybody should have. Huh? And she was also, she also got a prize, not you only got a prize, she also got a prize. She got the IATA prize in 2019, the High Flyer Award. It's very nice, I like that one. Yeah, I like that one. And maybe, Fadi, you could start a little bit, because your concern, of course, is Africa, and you heard in the words of when Henrik was talking about the different regions and continents, that Africa, for many in the aviation sector, the worldwide aviation sector, is still always of a big concern. And because in the end it's a sleeping giant, still a sleeping giant. Maybe it gets awake a little bit, yeah. But there should be much more, and aviation could play a major role. But I think 57 countries are on the African continent, something like
55.
that. 55. It's complicated, yeah, and there's probably not only one Africa, but probably several Africas. Maybe you could give us a little overview on Africa's aviation at the moment, as you see it. And then the second part could be that you talk a little bit about the challenges about professionalization in the sector, which is probably key to develop all these. I mean, we all know that investment is also needed, yeah. But professionalization, and what your special focus is on that.
Okay, thank you very
Welcome.
much. First, I want to thank Costa for giving me this opportunity to be here today speaking to most of you. I've met some, not everyone. And today is a tough day for me because I was full in the program for this aviation and tourism summer forum, but we got what we are now having in Africa, a coup. So
Again, yeah, in Gabon.
Gabon, yeah. So AfriJet is a private-owned airline, the only sustainable airline in Central Africa. And we are doing only ATRs. We have a business model that has been suitable for the region. And unfortunately, this morning at 4 a.m., because of presidential elections, the airspace is closed. So we are crossing fingers, and I've been working to try to sort out the crisis. But, well, it takes us into the conversation. I'm happy that we are here in a panel that's giving me the possibility to share my views. I joined the industry 13 years ago, and founding the Young African Aviation Professional Association is actually my story, because until 2010, I worked in a legal and tax firm as an intern, then worked for the Chinese company Huawei. So I worked a lot for 3 years in the development and expansion of Huawei in sub-Saharan Africa. I worked even in China, Shenzhen. So it's just by chance that I was offered the opportunity to work for the startup of my national airline, Cameco, after Cameroon Airlines closed. And I was the only Cameroonian director with the team of expatriates that were to launch the airline. So we had 6 months. So I think I went in for an online job training, and I had to get the awareness. And what struck me most was the fact that it was an industry I never ever considered about. And it was talking about sciences when I had just left sciences to do arts to get the local job. And more to that, there were no qualified staff of my generation at that time. So we were obliged to recruit those who were in the old company, Khmer. So those who actually killed Khmer after 37 years were the only people who could save the new airline. And then I came with my challenges because I didn't know much about aviation, and I never considered the opportunities, both airlines, airports, and the older ones who were criticizing all the time and saying, we are not qualified professionals. So quickly after 6 months, the expatriate team, we had a team from Holland, France, Spain. So these were professionals that actually came from Europe with a big background on aviation. And they could make me feel that this industry was worthy, and I could realize that the message wasn't going through. So I decided to create a non-profit organization after going across conferences in Africa back in 2011. Because 6 months after, I was promoted logistics and procurement manager in maintenance and engineering. So I landed in maintenance and engineering, and there was no woman. And so I was not an engineer, I was not technically an aviation professional, but I was a smart woman and young at that time. So I decided I wouldn't go back to school, but I would create a platform to address the professionals in the industry to reconsider the approach to Africa, because aviation is still considered as luxury. Aviation is misunderstood by our governments. Aviation doesn't stick yet. But Africa is special because we have 5 regions, and out of the 5 regions, 3 are much more developed. They have understood the secret of Africa. So Southern Africa, Western, English-speaking West Africa associated with East Africa, and Northern Africa. So the ones lagging are basically the French-speaking African countries. So basically 17 of them that have been popping recently with attempted coups. So I decided to share the knowledge within Africa first, because we don't know ourselves in Africa. This is obvious. And also try to see how the governments could bring in the politics that could suit to the development of Africa in general. And we all know the importance of aviation in the development of our economies, but the African Union has some highlights, like the Agenda 2063, which is not known by most of the young Africans that I meet, or SATAM, which was like intensified after the failure of YD in 2018, which is ongoing, but which is not known or perceived. Because I'll take an example. I have a practical case. Gabon signed for SATAM, and Congo DRC signed for SATAM. And we, AfriJet, just wanted to transport Africans from one point to the other, but we have obstruction from the Congolese government that says SATAM is not above BASAS. So we have to go back to sign the agreements, because the oldest one was in 1963. Yes. So this is a case study I brought up during the AFRA convention, where I had the stakeholders and I said, please don't just talk about SATAM, but I have a practical case and I need a solution. So the tendency on my engagement was to see what was lacking. And then this always came up back, that was 10 years ago. I always heard in conferences the African aviation is not doing well. So I said, but I'm African, from Africa, and you're doing nothing. Not as Africans, but as an industry, the aviation industry. And my message across the globe has been to raise the alarm. Africa has the fast-growing young population that is jobless. All of them dream to go to Europe, to come to your countries. And all of them have a bad perception because the politicians who are ignorant about the role of aviation on creating jobs, on the development of tourism, on creating jobs, because we have a rich continent. In its diversity, we have the natural resources, but we don't have the know-how on how to sell ourselves. And that's where, I have a great community of Greece in Cameroon. We've been there for like 70 years. And we all have embassies, but they don't play their role, because one of their roles is to try not only to teach, but to do facilitation on doing sisters municipalities where mayors could come, for example, in Rhodes and see how Rhodes developed its tourism plan to attract people, because we have other types of tourism opportunities. But we try as much as possible through our platform, investing on the next generation, because what I understood, I'm part of the lost one. So creating a platform where young Africans could talk within themselves, be curious about what is happening within Africa. And for those who have the chance of going out of the continent, to also focus on careers related to aviation, I have the belief that that's how we're going to change the mindset in Africa. Because the leaders, the politicians, are not interested. AFRA, AFCA, ASA do a great job. A lot of you come in, and as I say, a project is never stable, because our governments change like the direction of the wind. So when you come, it takes 6 months, 8 months, 1 year to do a deal, but by the time you're about to put that small signature, government changes. So the next person who comes, we don't have a spirit of continuity. So the next person who comes believes, oh, because you treated with Ricardo, you gave him money, so you also have to give my own share of the money. But we are tired about it. And so it's taken me 10 years talking to our leaders, talking to the leaders out of the continent, trying to get them realign the collaboration, talking to the European Union. I succeeded to have Henrik in Cameroon this February. And I keep the belief that with people like Abderrahman Bete of AFRA, Funke, maybe if they focus on investing on these younger ones, we will be able to get the change, because now it's...
When you look at it, do you recall or remember or know promising examples of development
Yes.
on the airline sector, maybe,
Yeah.
on regulation or on cooperation amongst African states, because that's probably also one of the bigger issues, that it's not seen as a big bloc. Yeah, it's a big continent, but interests are so diverse, and I mean, from Maghreb to South Africa, so different. But do you see promising examples, like for example Rwanda, or for example Ethiopia, or as far as aviation sector is concerned, or Kenya, or in
So-
in black in Western Black Africa?
Yeah, that is possible, and discussions have been ongoing, but it still happens in the regions that have aviation awareness. You can see this happen in Eastern Africa or Southern Africa, but if I take you back to Central Africa, where I come from, we have 6 countries: Cameroon, Gabon, Chad, Central African Republic, Congo, and Equatorial Guinea. So if we only take the models of the airlines there, you have Cameroon Airlines, which is basically non-existent in Cameroon. You have Seiba in Equatorial Guinea, which is basically non-existent. As I said, AfriJet is non-profit. It is private. So because it's private, it has its autonomy with the challenges from the government. So we've tried to see how we could work together to facilitate the movement of the about close to 40 million inhabitants just in the region. And it's very complicated because every country, and that's why recently I was saying, I think as aviation professionals, we should write a book, Aviation for the Politicians. Because, yeah, because they don't understand. Let's take the example of COVID. Nobody expected to have COVID. And if we didn't have cargo, thanks to cargo, and thanks to Ethiopian Airlines that has a model in Africa that is sustainable because government involvement is not felt, we could be saved. So let's see the scenario differently, apart from Ethiopian Airlines. Because now the tendency in Africa is the politicians say we need to drive out the European countries. So there is a tendency of saying we drive away those who colonize us, which I think personally is very wrong. Not because I'm here, I'm not flattering anyone, but because we talk about a global world. When we were going into the 2000, we were saying, let's talk about the global world. No one, global warming, it doesn't affect one region, it's the whole world. So the mindsets of those who technically take the decisions for us, we as aviation, well, as aviation as an industry, should be the standalone industry. Because to simplify, when I meet the young people, I say, listen, aviation in one word is it's not an industry, it's the pivot of all other industries. Because we cannot succeed, telecom cannot succeed if we don't have aviation. Because even if they have a spare part to replace, for us to have connectivity, they need to go through cargo. So if you look at all the other aspects, we are very important, but we are the only ones who don't know that we are that important. So it's still sad to see that a lot of marketing is being done on all other sectors, but aviation in global, we focus on criticizing ourselves when we should actually unite ourselves and get the narratives changed. And I think COVID gave us this opportunity to talk to everyone, because we can have a next COVID. We don't know what will happen next. And if we don't seize this opportunity, because we had COVID, everything was stopped, everybody thought the world was coming to an end, and we are almost a year and a half out of COVID, and nothing has changed. If you meet airlines in Africa and ask them, because that's what I do, you say, what is your plan for human capital? That will enable me get some sponsorship to orientate these kids into these careers. Nobody has. I try to put my airline, AfriJet, with other airlines in the region for the CEOs to talk, because I fly within Gabon. Cameroon Airlines fly within Cameroon. And I just said, let's just unite to facilitate this movement. And I've never had a response. And we have 2 landlocked countries, Chad, which is very huge, and Central African Republic, and they depend on Cameroon, but they don't have connectivity. So my talk is, if we want to seize the opportunity of what happened, we should focus more as an industry to criticize ourselves and to put forward what is happening in the world. I was fortunate to be in Kazakhstan, and everyone following me was like, what are you going to do in Kazakhstan? So I said, follow me and you will see. Now I have everyone asking me, what is SAF? So the younger ones who follow me, because I tell them, I say, you have to focus on the future careers and opportunities, but we need the support of all of you. I need to get people see what is happening elsewhere. If not, if you come to my country, Henrik experienced it, the agent, the security agent at the airport, who has never flown, who has never traveled, for him had the delegation, he had the DG of the European Union visiting the facility that they offered in my country, but they were just doing the job the opposite way. Because for them, when you come to the airport, they are the bosses, you know? And when I asked, why are they behaving this way? They said, because we have the European Commission inspecting us. And I'm like, but that is the boss of the European Commission. You are receiving poorly. So it's all about, as small as it can be, it's all about information, exposure, and understanding. And this, I'm sorry to say, but our top leaders are also blind. So when you come and you tell them, oh, we have the open skies, they listen to you, but no. So I think as an industry, we are thinking about the evolution of aviation. We are in a phase of transformation, but we need to make it easy. Like we say, aviation for there is a book for every industry. So we need to make it accessible and teach the younger ones. It goes from the base. If not, we will never, ever get anywhere.
Probably we could listen for hours, and I just recommend everyone to book her. No, it's really, really very, very interesting. It's of course very, very complex. Yeah. Thanks very much for giving us at least a little glimpse of this insight, and we can continue. But unfortunately, we have to. Yeah. And I have to look a little bit at our timetable. So, thank you very much. But I wanted to ask Michal, how many Embraers are flying in Africa? You know?
I think around 250.
250?
I think, yeah. We are within a single aisle. We are the second largest supplier of aircraft, slightly ahead of Airbus, behind Boeing. But yeah, in terms of value, probably we're the third.
On single aisle, you are.
Yeah, but of course I'm being a little bit tricky. No, second. Second. After Boeing, ahead of Airbus. But I'm being a little tricky because I'm counting every single thing that we have ever manufactured, counting the Brasilias, the turboprops, and so of course ERJs and E-jets. But in terms of market share, it is the most successful market for us. For sure, yeah. Within the volumes are not that great, of course, because it's not as big. But I think in terms of brand recognition and the number of aircraft, number of carriers that are using Embraer, we're fairly successful, and we keep on growing like year after year.
I looked up the figure of how many Embraer aircraft had been produced since the production started 40 years ago or 30 years ago. Was it 1990 or something like that?
Well, depending which Embraers are you again taking into account. I think everything that flies, the count would be around 8,000. But Embraer historically.
The Embraer family that we know now. Yeah. It's 1,600, a little bit more. Yeah,
we celebrated the 1700th delivery of the E-jet recently, so it's 1,700.
Oh, okay.
Of the big ones.
I mean, this is the market you're representing is an interesting market, yeah, because there's sometimes this philosophy, of course, standardize all your aircraft and make it big enough, at least for low-cost carriers, yeah. So you get a better average price or average cost in the end. And the Embraers, which is a very good aircraft, I think, yeah. I mean, serving secondary markets, or I wouldn't say niche markets, but secondary markets, or help increase your frequency, yeah, between two destinations. Can you tell us a little bit about the success factors or story of Embraer, which nobody believed 40 years ago that Brazil would be able to, in the end, develop such an industry and such a successful model.
I have a little helper.
A little helper. And the second question I would like to address to you is, as well, we talked about the the A220, the A220. But when you look at the worldwide production of aircraft, or at least the ambitions, is there maybe in future a Chinese or a Russian challenger, or even from some other country? That would be that I would like to get interested in. Will Embraer stay independent?
Oh, many big questions, many big questions. A success story in executive summary. It is an amazing story. We have 54 years. We turned 54, I think, last week. And we were established in Brazil in the late 60s. Back then, Brazilians are joking, they were not able to even put the bicycle together. And then a couple of crazy guys came together with the idea, let's conquer the aerospace industry, and they managed. Embraer since then reinvented themselves constantly, and it's a very bizarre mixture of conservatism, because Embraer is a conservative company day to day, with a lot of boldness, because every 5-10 years Embraer did something new. We started with the 9-seater low altitude, then we did something pressurized, then we expanded to 19 seats, then we went into the jet segment. And I think this is the first time when we really went global with the ERJ family. Then we decided to do something completely crazy and conquer the executive jets segment, becoming one of the fastest selling executive jet producer in the world. Then we pushed the boundaries even farther, and with the E-jets and doing the 100-seaters, followed by the E2 family. Now we are approaching 150 seats. In the meantime, we also expanded in defense. We are now challenging the Hercules segment and Airbus in the smaller transporters. So we became really now the third largest OEM in the world, still far, far behind the two biggest ones. But we are facing another reinvention, I think, because the market, especially in the commercial part, the market has dramatically changed the environment over the last 5 years. We used to be the leader of the regional aviation. We've been competing with Bombardier, we've been competing with this market with ATR, and we kind of behaved as a leader. We've been a closed segment. And suddenly, we lost the competition here, but the entire segment is being under pressure, and we find ourselves competing with Airbus and Boeing directly. And part of the challenge is this narrative that you mentioned about the single feature and simplification approach. So I think the regional aviation in general has a bit of an identity crisis. Since ever, I think it was a little bit difficult for me to define what does it really mean, regional aviation. Do you define it by the size of the airport that you're serving, by the length of the flight, or maybe size of the aircraft? No one really knows what's the regional aviation. And then there's a lot of airlines that are described as regional operators that are under pressure because there's consolidation, economies of scale, and many of our natural customers have difficulties. So we end up with a situation where I genuinely believe that we have a very good aircraft, probably the best, the most advanced technologically aircraft in the single-aisle space. The only match for us, I think, would be the Dreamliner or the 350 in terms of technology. But that we have to constantly push and justify why this aircraft makes sense in the day-to-day operation of the airlines. But I'm very, very confident that it does.
We only have 5 minutes, but I want to add to that, because a few years ago everybody was talking about the death of the regional airlines. But they still survive, or sometimes get stronger, or find these niche markets, or bigger carriers do have these niche markets. So as far as the growth prospects are concerned, you are not skeptical?
I am not, and I think this is what I wanted to say. If you consider Europe, for example, as a market, there is very little in common when you compare the market like Heathrow to Madrid, probably 5,000 passengers a day, and the market like Stuttgart to Skiathos, right? Why would you assume that there's one single type of aircraft that could most optimally serve those two markets? So, and in the wide-body space, everyone accepts the fact that you need different tools. You start with the 330s or Dreamliners, and you complement with the bigger. Somehow in the narrow body, there was this tendency to to focus on the 320, 737s. To a certain degree, it was also driven by economics. The A220 and E2, they are really changing the paradigm. The new technology and the step change in economics versus the previous family is making now the trade-offs between the seat cost and the trip cost much more attractive. So I believe in this segment. I don't know. I have no crystal ball into how this segment will be served, whether the regional airlines will manage to accommodate their niches, or will they be somehow accommodated by the larger groups. But the need for a second smaller narrow body to complement the bigger narrow bodies, I have no doubt about it.
Yeah, 3 sentences about Chinese competition or Russian.
There's a saying that pride comes before fail, right? So being complacent would be a great mistake. Soviet Union had a great tradition of aerospace engineering, design, and capabilities. Chinese has.
There was at least a Chinese-Russian cooperation also.
There might be.
Yeah.
But Chinese have shown that in many other industries they have challenged legacy manufacturers from the West, even high-end, high-tech industries. But there's a very, very high barrier to enter this segment. It is not only to manufacture the aircraft. I think this is on its own very difficult. We've seen Bombardier tried. They managed to do it, but it broke them financially. We've seen Japanese almost unlimited financial resources, and they hardly managed to put the aircraft in the air once and then close the program. So I think where Embraer is quite unique is our ability to manage the projects and bring them to the end. We certified more aircraft in 21st century than any other manufacturer, 21 platforms. But still, I have no doubt the Chinese will get there and will be able to do it technologically. Last sentence, what is underappreciated barrier is creating the ecosystem to operate those aircraft. After sales support, MROs, training ecosystems. So I think this is where Chinese will have to work a little bit more, because you have to have a global network to support those aircraft before you'd be able to sell them beyond your political influence.
Yeah, last question, then we have to finish.
Quick comment question and very quick comment question. Soviet Union aviation aerospace industry was very much reliant on Ukrainian know-how.
Yes.
Just to say.
Yes, very much.
The question I have is, what did you, or how would you assess the failure of the Boeing acquisition of Embraer? What did it mean to Embraer? Did it give it a new boost, or was it something that you took some time to heal the wounds? And the last very quick question is, wouldn't you say that when you talk about regional aviation, that the current Embraer portfolio is a perfect tool for the ACMI service providers?
Difficult questions again. Boeing failure meant different things for many people individually. Some individuals maybe had high hopes in terms of career prospects that would have brought. I'm actually happy that it didn't go through, because I'm a romantic and I really believe in this idea of challengers, market challengers, and I like the fact that the Bombardier and Embraer are two forces that could have given Boeing and Airbus a run for their money, and I think really this industry needs more competition. We see the engine. The engine problems right now are the direct consequences that we don't have options. Right? The airlines don't have options. But also for us as a company, it costed us a lot of money. We are in litigation still with Boeing over this. I think the reason why it didn't go through, well, probably Boeing will never admit it publicly, but I think they were mostly political. They really, there was a very light complement in terms of our portfolio. They really value our engineering skills and resources, but the timing, COVID, max grounding, a lot of state aid to Boeing made it very difficult to close the very moment. And a second question was...
Wouldn't you say that the Embraer portfolio is a perfect tool for the
for
ACMI service providers?
Yes and no. most of the ACMI in Europe is still seasonal flying. Everyone wants to challenge tackle the seasonality by sourcing capacity from outside. The seasonal peak is mostly leisure traffic. Leisure traffic is mostly about cost per seat, so it's 320s, 321s that are in the highest demand. But I think what is more interesting for us is the CPA, the long-term outsourcing. We still don't have the ecosystem like in the United States where you have the regional carriers doing the work for the feeding for the main lines. But I think there's something here that can go this way. It's a bit of a chicken and egg situation. We don't have a strong providers that could provide the stability and economies of scale. But we need to crack this and we are also looking into this. Thank you.
We could have listened for hours. Everyone who was doing these fantastic, presentations and insights that we had, and please give them a big hand. Thank you. Okay. One picture of all no, thank you. Thank you very much. Picture?
Oh, a picture.
Picture.
Oh. So I'm the lucky woman.
Look at me. Hey, look at you.
Thank you.
Okay, so thank you very much. We are a little out of the time, so we continue with the airline and airport leaders panel. And I ask Professor Andreas Papatheodorou, President of Hellenic Aviation Society, to moderate the next panel.
Thank you. So thank you very much for this invitation to moderate the second panel. Kostas told me that we need to finish by 7:30 because it's getting dark, but it's a real pleasure to have some great people in my panel. They're going to shed a lot of light, so I'm sure we can deal with darkness later on. So I would like to invite to our panel, first of all, David Ticho, who is the CEO of Cluj International Airport in Romania. Ricardo Labiris, who is the chairman of Athens International Airport here in Greece. Theodore Kiritis, who is the president of IFATSEA. And last but not least, Dr. Rado Kotorov, who is the founder and CEO of Storied Data Inc. So thank you very much for being with us. The title of this panel is Airline and Airport Leaders. We don't have a representative from the airline sector, but we do have two great panelists from airports. President of IFATSEA, which is the International Federation of Traffic Safety Electronics Association, and also the CEO of Storied Data. It's a very interesting story itself. We're going to talk about this later. But let me start with airports. And David, I have a first question for you. You are the heart of Cluj Airport. You have experienced the meteoric rise in terms of traffic, in terms of revenue over the last 20 years. If you can kindly say a few things about this success story and how you see the way forward.
Cluj is the second airport in Romania, in Transylvania. Probably all of you heard about Dracula, so it's Dracula's friend. The traffic increased a lot in Romania in general and also in Cluj. in 96, the whole traffic in Romania, it was only 2 million passengers, the whole country, and at the time we had 21 million inhabitants. For Romania, before crisis in 2019, we had 24 million passengers. In Cluj, from 30,000, we increased to 2.9 million in 2019. A big help was that Romania joined the European Union in 2007. Liberalization came, so it was a big possibility to develop, especially regional airports. We still have big potential in Romania. As I said before, in 2019, 24 million passengers in Romania, 2.9 million passengers in Cluj. The traffic collapsed in 2020, but we managed to recover very well. This year in Cluj we will have 3.2 million, more than 2019, and as we can see, regional airports managed to recover better than the other airports in Europe. We expect in Europe to reach the level of 2019 only in 2025, but regional airports and also in Romania we managed already to recover. We still have big potential because we have around 20 million inhabitants. In Romania, unfortunately, we have bad roads and not enough highways and not rapid trains. We, in a way, for tourism, for business, we are like an island, unfortunately. Now they started to build highways. Probably it will be a long way for rapid trains, but being like an island, aviation is very important for our economy and for tourism.
Great. So, in terms of the aviation and tourism relationship, if we talk about inbound tourism, I think in terms of leisure, it's predominantly being a gateway to Transylvania, and you mentioned the Dracula story, which of course is very well known. Is this the only thing, or is there something beyond Dracula? How do you capitalize on that?
The traffic is diverse. We have ethnic traffic because a lot of Romanians are working abroad, but we have also a lot of tourism. Low cost, it is a phenomenon. In Cluj, we have Wizz Air and Ryanair. Wizz Air, they have 70% of our traffic in Cluj, 7 airplanes based. In Romania, this year, Wizz Air will have more than 50% of Romania traffic with Air. Due to a lot of new destinations, foreigners discovered Romania, discovered Cluj. We have more than 35 destinations from Cluj, which 10 years ago were not possible. It is also a university city. We have more than 100,000 students. Official population is 300,000, but with the urban area and students, we have more than 500,000 students, and we have a lot of foreigner students, more than 10,000 foreigner students, especially for medical universities. They teach in French, they teach in English. More than 3,000 medical students from France for medical university. So we have a mix, we have a big potential. We expect to have in 2040 more than 7 million passengers.
Great. And do you collaborate with the local tourism authorities as well?
We cooperate with them, with local authorities. Unfortunately, we do not have very good tourist facilities. Not yet. Mountain is 1 hour. Now we have a new airport in Romania, in Brașov. They have better tourist facilities for ski. Several years ago, the Romanian ambassador in Estonia called me how the Estonians would like to go to ski, but in Cluj, but not very good facilities. we have a lot to do to improve tourist facilities. A lot of foreigners did not yet discover really our country.
And regarding outbound tourism, you mentioned the big number of Romanians. Do you think it's possible for your airport to expand its catchment area beyond the borders of Romania?
Not beyond the border. 15 years ago, our main competitor was Budapest. It was 6-hour driving, but we did not have enough flights. It was cheaper. They had a lot of flights. Budapest is not anymore because now we have a lot of destinations. We have a lot of connections. We have with Lufthansa 4 flights daily, 2 to Frankfurt, 2 to Munich. We have daily Turkish airline to Istanbul. We have a daily lot to Warsaw, mainly for connecting flights. Now we have a competitor, Hungarian airport, Debrecen. It's 3-hour driving. They are very active and they target the same catchment area like us. Well, we like competition, but we want a fair competition. We have a lot of airports in Romania, 17 airports. Also, we have Romanian, but they are small airports, not really competitors now. It was very difficult to reach 1 million passengers because it was a risk for airlines. We did a lot of marketing. Now I can see 3 million. It's another important threshold for us, a good one. Ryanair 15 years ago said, okay, give us €1 and we'll come and pay nothing. Now we have discounts according to the volume. They do not qualify, not yet, Ryanair. They pay the full price, €25 per passenger, and they increase the destinations. So we have another 3 million, another power of negotiation. It's very important, and we work very hard to increase connectivity. Lufthansa did not have, sometimes it's fully booked. So we would like next year to have 2 daily with Turkish, 2 daily with LOT. We discussed with Air Serbia, with Fly Dubai, with other airlines. We want to be, after Bucharest, of course, to be the best connected airport.
Great, thank you very much. And Ricardo, let me come to you. You are the chairman of Athens International Airport, which is a best practice, I would say, not only in Greece, but at a wider level. Again, would you like to elaborate on the transport and tourism relationship, especially with respect to connectivity?
Well, thanks a lot for this panel. It's a great honor being here. It's fantastic being in Rhodes again. I think it's important for Rhodes in particular, with the forest fires and everything, that we're all having this session here. So I think it's fantastic. But I'll stay on connectivity a bit. And I think, I'm relatively new to the industry, but what has struck me from the first point, from first moment I joined the industry, is how shy we are. How shy we're about talking about our story. I mean, the previous panelists discussed about, what we should be doing, what we should be saying, and I'm very happy that initiatives like the IEF, which Costa is running, are going to come out and tell our story. So, connectivity, air transport connects the world. There's no doubt about it, right? I mean, it's a $3.8 trillion industry, 3.8 billion passengers, right? 61 million jobs. And I think Glenn will be happy that 35% by value is global trade, right? And all this is Wikipedia, by the way. So you can tell all this to your new friend that, the transport industry. Okay. So, but bring it back to Greece. The tourism industry here is about 30% of GDP. 73% of passengers, of tourists come through air, or 21 million roughly people. So that's huge, huge, huge number for Greece. So you can imagine the impact if we didn't have air transport in Greece. Leaving aside, the remote locations, we have the islands. Today we would not be able to have this, fantastic venue. Now, Athens itself, it contributes roughly 5 billion to the economy. We are sort of 1 out of 4 tourists come. That's.
You still have time.
Yeah, still got time.
That's the slow transport.
Yeah, exactly. So about 1 out of 4 passengers, tourists, come through Athens. So that's very important. So if you look at it, we have a very, very important role within the community, within the economy, and we try and lead by example. And to do this, we need to try and be innovative. We need to, be proactive. So some of the things we've done, and maybe 2023 is year in our history in the sense that Athens, for the first time, has become not only a destination for the monuments and then we hop onto another island, but people actually come to Athens as a destination to spend time in Athens. It's the only capital in Europe where it is sea and sun, but you also have monuments, you have culture, you have other things to do. And that, I think, is a very important thing. And we've worked with that. We've worked for that many years, right? It doesn't happen from one minute to the other. And this brings another value proposition, let's say, for us as an airport, because you get more routes, right? So we've been very, very blessed to have, interconnected very well with Northern America. So we have 9 destinations in the US, which was not the case, 63 flights per week. That's fantastic. We have Air Canada, and now we're working with India, the government of India, to bring a direct flight into Athens, and South Korea, just to name a few. So there's lots of efforts going on. So route development has been very important, and we're also approaching sort of, I'd say, subsectors like niche travel. So one of them is, for instance, medical. You talked about that. That's very important for us. The Swiss have a huge industry in this. Greece, we could do it. You have also, what Portugal and Spain have been doing for many years, retirees, pensioners. We have sports, right? We have the classic marathon. Why not increase this? Why not increase the people who run the marathons? Marathons, of course, are very popular these days, so that's, for instance, one of the great ideas. Culture. We have, for instance, the Athens Festival, right? Not very well known. We're promoting this. So, people are starting to acclimate to that and, starting to say, this year, instead of going to another European destination, why don't I go to Athens? And we're trying to work it all year round, which is very important because our tourist industry has been focused on the summer months, but we're now expanding this throughout the months. And another one which I think is both innovative but important, and I think one of the panelists earlier said about cluttering of key locations. So for instance, when you come to Athens, everyone wants to go to Parthenon. But when you see the lines waiting to get in the Parthenon, it's like what's happening in the Colosseum in Rome, right? So what we're trying to do is promote alternative destinations. So for instance, to paint the picture, in 2023, Elefsina, which is a small industrial town in the outskirts of Athens, is a cultural city of Europe. So promoting this very strongly, if you come to the airport, you'll see that there's panels for Elefsina, etc. But I want this to remain in people's minds because we want people to remember that Elefsina, or they can come to go and see Elefsina. So it's very important, and there's many other things to do. And then, because we talk about sustainability, and it would be unfair not to have part of sustainability, we're very, very focused on promoting this and leading by example. And we're one of the first airports to help the ACI airport accreditation. We're the first airport to put photovoltaic plants in Greece, possibly in Europe. I think it was 8 megawatts in 2011. Then we did another now in March of 2023, we put another 16 megawatts, and we have a program for another 40 megawatts plus batteries to take us from the first zero carbon neutral airport in 2016 in Greece to the first zero carbon neutral, I always get these confused, carbon neutral airport in 2025. So this is a bit what we're doing and how we're trying to promote, the image of Athens, of Greece, and of the airport itself.
And a related question, the last 15 years have been too interesting, I would say, for Greece. We went through a massive economic crisis, and as soon as we managed, slightly starting getting out of it, we experienced COVID. How did Athens International Airport manage to fare over this crisis?
Okay, so obviously, the Greek economic crisis was a major disruptor, as was COVID for Greece, for Athens, for the airport, for our airlines. It cost us money. it created a bad perception about the country and Athens itself, and obviously we saw a failure in passenger numbers. The Greek crisis started in 2009, and where we were mostly hit as an airport, where we saw passenger numbers coming down, was 2011, 2012, where we saw historic lows in passenger numbers. In 2011, we had started already an aggressive program of marketing and promotion, but also of strong incentives to airlines, which actually we saw, and this is interesting because there's a lag, we saw it kicking in really strongly in 2013, right? 2013 to 2019 was massive. We had 105% increase in passenger numbers, the best ever numbers until, of course, this year, with 25.58 million passengers in 2019. So massive growth. And most importantly, or interestingly for the economists, it was completely uncorrelated to, unfortunately, Greek GDP. So I would have hoped that Greek GDP at this growth would be fine and out of the crisis much earlier. Then I think, there's this saying that says, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. So, we got a lot out of the Greek crisis. We learned to be more efficient. We learned to be more, use new technology. And maybe it also brought us closer together. So all the various parts of the airport community, of the aviation in Greece, they came together, right? And these were strong lessons learned, which helped us during the COVID period. However, COVID was a ball game on its own, right? So we took lots of experience out of that, and it helped us through COVID, which, we sort of fared slightly better potentially from some other jurisdictions because of the support program of the government, which we didn't, have these massive layoffs. We didn't have people leaving from the aviation sector, so it was slightly easier for us to cater to the new increased growth.
Mm-hmm. And I think, as you rightly said, all these crises raise the issue of partnerships and how different stakeholders can come together. And I think one of the main children, let's say, of this crisis was the formation of the Athens Tourism Partnership, where you play a very key role in working with the other stakeholders together, GN Airlines, Athens Destination Development Management Agency. Would you like to say a few things about stakeholder management and the Athens Tourism Partnership?
Yeah, no, I think it's extremely important, and I think the testament is the growth period from 2013 to 2019. Mm-hmm. It was, everyone came together and they said, we sort of hit, this, we need to do something because tourism is 30%, as I said, of GDP. We need to react, and I think everyone put their best foot in front, and you came together. We put in an action plan. We heavily subsidized altogether marketing efforts. We had the mayor as well, of Athens helping. We had the Minister of Tourism. So it was a combined effort which came to this. And of course, it flows out of Athens. We are connected to all the destinations in Greece. So it flows out and it helps more generally the country.
Okay, thank you so much. Okay, let me now come to Theodore. Now, it's getting more difficult now, because, aviation tourism, we all have something in mind. We can develop a nice narrative regarding airlines and airports, but now we're going to talk about the Federation of Associations which relate to air traffic safety from an electronic engineering point of view. So it's no longer B2C, it's B2B. Most passengers are unaware of your association, although you are indispensable, and obviously safety comes first. So would you like to say a few things about IFATSEA and its role in the business ecosystem?
Thank you very much. Rest assured that whatever I tell you might raise a couple of eyebrows. Okay, and since we had the disruptions, yesterday in Central Europe. First, allow me to thank Dr. Iatrou for inviting me and giving me a rare opportunity to address such a distinguished audience. And I say rare because we technical people are not usually heard on the second sentence, yeah, fix it and let me know. It goes like that. So our federation joins professionals. We are called ATSEP, Air Traffic Safety Electronic Personnel or Professionals. We are a recognized profession in ICAO. We have a training and a competency scheme by ICAO, We are not included in Annex 1 alongside the pilots, the aircraft engineers, and the air traffic controllers. We have a strong regulatory framework in Europe under Regulation 373, the common requirements. And as I said, we bring together 74 associations, more or less, around the world. In Europe, we have been very active since 2005 by working together in CESAR, the research program. I had the honor to watch Henry chair a lot of these meetings. I was in the admin board at the time. But let me come down a little bit to the hard facts. As you mentioned, we are not out there in the public eye, so you don't know what we do. So mostly economists, people with economic background or operational background in general, they are interested in the product that goes out from the level of the air traffic controller and beyond. And we talk about capacity. And then we forget that in order for the air traffic controller or the pilot to perform the work, there has to be a certain number of systems and infrastructure to provide the air navigation services. I will just focus on air traffic services and communication, navigation, and surveillance services. And these systems and services have to be there, available 100% of the time. Ask a controller how they feel when they lose one of the systems. We saw now we had to switch back to paper strips, and all helped turn around, Now, the hard reality came yesterday, and we had a failure in nuts. And if you read in the news, it says a computer glitch. It's not a glitch. It's a lot more difficult than that. In order to identify a problem in software, you have to know the total system and how it performs, the legacy systems and how they perform, and the data processing system. We have legacy radar that works fine at the moment, and we have highly digitalized systems, and they mix together. We have new things coming in from CESAR, and everybody is rushing and saying, how much will this solution from CESAR give me as an improvement from capacity? And they say 10%. Good, I want it. But nobody has the total picture. We do. Okay? Now, we can't speak it out because nobody wants to listen to us. It's too technical. Let's talk about capacity. And let's see how much this failure in NAT cost. It must be in the range of millions. Thousands of flights were derouted or didn't take off, etc., etc. Not to forget the passenger that has been affected. So what is happening? Why do we have so many failures? What was the last one? A few months ago, it was the NOTAM system in FAA. Why? Because of old software, non-compatible interoperability, anti-quake equipment. Yeah. And what else? A few months ago, it was again in Philippines. A glitch again, which was not a glitch, it was a total failure of the system. Why are systems failing? And why can't we bring them back? Cannot we not bring them back on time? Or can we? Or with regard to my profession, whenever you have an air traffic controller consuming our services, or a pilot consuming navigation service, let's say, we are responsible for the system not failing. It doesn't matter how old it is, okay? So we are responsible for not failing. So we're contributing in the total GDP that Ricardo mentioned, okay? In a country like Greece, where it's an important, what's it, 30%?
30%, the rest was 30%.
Now, we are contributing, but nobody knows it. So nobody's interested, okay? Now, when the system fails, the clock starts ticking again of how quickly you will recover it. So what's the key word here? The key word is resilience, okay? But we're in a safety critical industry. So what about safety? What has happened? Now, what about automation? What about digitalization? Nice words, okay? They're coming in. But how do we address those? So in closing, what happens now is that we have a lot of different decision-making areas with different motivation and with one common, cost reduction. So why are the systems failing? Well, at the moment, I raised the first flag, we don't have ATSEP, that is engineering and technical stuff, to look after the systems. Why? Because it's not appealing. It's safety critical. Why should a young engineer come and be underpaid in an ANSP and not go out and work for the banking industry, the other industries, etc., etc.? So at the moment, what we're faced with is lack of trained, competent, and available ATSEP engineers. And there is a nice article that, nice because I've written it, but it will be uploaded by Kostas, and we say how these engineers will be attracted, retained, so they can serve. Otherwise, we're going to face a problem.
And what about the role of SMS, safety management systems, in this context? Because culture is also very important, and after all, I think it's the overall mentality, a new holistic mentality that we're in need of.
Okay, listen, our name since 1983 is Air Traffic Safety Electronic Professionals. Now, get ready for the eyebrow now. In 2017, 16, ICAO redrafted the safety manual. And if you look in the corrections, all systems and the mandatory requirement for them to be compliant with the safety management system have been excluded. So this is a fact. In Europe, there was mentioning about CNS providers, communication, navigation, and safety, surveillance, as well as ATM processing, to be compliant with the safety management system. Okay? This has been taken away. I don't know. I can come out and give about 2 hours more, But the thing is, why? It's a fact again. Maybe it was a better drive for liberalization, I don't know. But we raised the issue. And just to give you a practical example, we see as a major enabler digitalization, automation, and we all like it now, artificial intelligence. Okay? Today, the systems that we have developed follow a certain process or have followed. So the engineer in place, whenever they receive a call from the air traffic controller, or having double targets, or targets lost, or delays in refresh, critical issues towards safety, they know how the system works. Now, tomorrow, when we implement artificial intelligence algorithms, the system will keep learning, okay? So every moment, the system will be different. Okay, why is this bad? Because when the phone rings now, we don't know how the system will be operating. And that is the ATSEP, okay? And you have now another regulatory issue here. And what is that? When the change from the old 1135 regulation for common requirements in Europe was changed to the 373, the software safety assurance has been revoked. So we have now another eyebrow here, the new technology that everybody will be trusting on is not required to be compliant with software assurance. Yeah. What are we doing?
Which is contradicting. Let's hope that this will be somehow resolved, because it's a big
At the moment, no, there is no resolution. We have raised this in all sorts of places. And I'll give you another example. We have been involved in CESAR since 2005. CESAR, as you know, it's a European research program for ATM. CESAR went through different phases. The professional staff organizations, the air traffic controllers, the ATSEP, the pilots, are contributing to CESAR. And we put through a paper in 2012 asking them to take into account cybersecurity. It was well heard. Then that led to the conclusion, the admin board, that there is a problem here. The initial design of Cesar did not take into account cybersecurity. Remember, okay? Now we raise the flag there, and we say you're developing all these things, but effectively, what does cybersecurity mean? When you have the ATSEP on duty next to the ACC center or near the tower, and you have a technical failure in front of you, you have now the question, is it just a technical failure? Or is it a cybersecurity breach that led to a technical failure? So now the guy who is on duty has to respond in seconds, Yanni, in seconds, and say what we're going to do now. Okay, of course you will consult his tools. There are no tools.
Right. Thank you. And Rado, let me come to you. Again, I'm sorry I was not aware of your company before coming here, but I was really amazed by what was discussed between you and me and also your colleagues. So would you like to say a few things about story data and how it can relate to the transport sector?
Yeah, thank you. First of all, I want to clarify here that many people said that Costas made us dress and do things for this beautiful beach in a business attire. But actually when I came and I met him at the door of the hotel, he was in his trunks and I said, what's the dress code? He said, just like that. So it's good that I took a shirt. So apparently not everybody heard the memo, but thank you for bringing us to this beautiful place. The three things I hear, the three words most often mentioned in this conference were efficiency, transparency, and competition. And we all can agree that these three things are highly desirable and they lead to better outcomes both for business and for the consumers. And if we look today, these three words depend mostly on data and information. And I learned that the hard way in the airline industry during the bankruptcy procedures for Air Canada, when the judge said I would sign on the bankruptcy deal, but you need to build better information and decision-making systems. We were on the receiving end because we had to give the software for free for that, but they built every operational system at that time was very carefully thought, and actually the design of every metric was meticulous and amazing. And I learned the second way on efficiency when it came through the Boeing coming and saying we need to process 1 billion data points coming a minute to understand how fuel efficiency varies when we go up and down because of global warming. And then the military, I learned that refueling of airplanes is a highly complex operation that the Smithsonian awarded an award for that to make it happen because it's critical. You have to do it very fast, limited spaces, territories that are under dangerous conditions, and etc. So a lot of problems from the efficiency can be solved with this. But when we bring competition, we all know that information is the most valuable resource today about making money and making more money out of that. So that puts efficiency versus competition and leads to hoarding of information. And transparency, I never cease to amaze. Everybody talks about transparency, and the most often I hear we can't publish this data because the interest rates are too high in Romania, and it can cause a revolution if we put it on a public site. So I've heard all of these stories. So, but going back to it, what we are in the business of is to make the data publishing, data transparency, and enabling decision-making information focused very particularly on decision-making information because as the founder of information theory, Herbert Spencer said, the increase in information leads to a opacity of knowledge. And we can see it everywhere with more and more information. I had discussions with Microsoft that said, we want to train everybody and every training manual to be on TikTok now. So going back to your problem, everyone wants now the AI systems to produce a single point decision making do that. And nobody understands that the contextual knowledge around this is much more important. So you don't have tools to consult when you have to make a decision in a split second. And when you're taking a decision from a system that's a learning system, it's by definition an unstable system. You need to know what things to take into account. So we're kind of going blinded into that stuff. And the final point I'll make here is that the second popular topic I heard is that data is the new oil. And it's not actually exactly accurate. It's the new crude oil. So data by itself, until we turn it into a data product or into decision-making information, doesn't mean a lot. And with so many years of talking about decisions and data, what never ceases to amaze me is that when I go to every company, the first thing I hear is about, we don't get good information to make decisions. They have dashboards, and I'll give you an example. The CEO of McDonald's said, I used to have a 9-page report and know what's happening in the 16,000 stores around the world. From 9-page report. Now I have 300 dashboards, and I don't know where to start. So we increase the level of that and stuff, which leads to frustration. So we are focused on reversing this process, going back to the original Deming things that started with total quality management and saying, nobody needs more than 1 page and no more than 3 reports if you want to have an efficient organization, which means a lot of pre-thought. And then because we have a lot of data, 1 page is not enough, so we have to rethink the technology, how to allow everything to be visible on 1 page as NASA wants it, but also to have a depth of information and an ability to see beyond, within context of smaller and smaller pieces. And that's where we're focused now. So data publishing and information distributions are largely unsolved problem in organizations. If you go beyond, most organizations go and say, I have 15 people on my implementation, I have 50 people on my decision support system. But if you look at large organizations, and especially in logistics, FedEx, 34,000 people in the field needing data every day, pilots needing it, we have with Saudi Arabia with limited bandwidth information, how you distribute, how you prepare it for them, how they can make a decision in less than 30 seconds on reliable and understandable facts. Because you can give them a lot of information that they don't understand, but the decisions wouldn't be what you expect. And still, 90% of the people in organizations make decisions based on gut feelings. And the stories are horrible. You don't want your heart surgeon to operate you on a gut feeling. And it's very strange that we trust much bigger decision than a heart surgery that would affect tragedies, regardless whether it's 1 person or more. But we actually trust much bigger decision on a less certain and less well prepared for understanding information. So that to me is like the biggest thing that we have to solve, because we are moving into a world where everybody is expecting magical systems to tell you what we do. We want to outsource our thinking to AI, and that's not a good idea, at least in the foreseeable future.
I mean, that's exactly the thing I wanted to ask. When we talk about big data analysis, usually what comes to my mind is the role of artificial intelligence. When we talk about transparency, I keep thinking about blockchaining. So are these just fancy buzzwords, or can they be really applied in your context?
So going back to it, blockchain is an enormous database. So we still have the mindset everywhere of the piping. How do we do the piping? And I tell people, when you're buying a house, do you look at the piping or do you look at the house? Nobody looks at the piping at the moment, because when you're buying a house, the end product is important. How we would pipe the data, how we'll get it in, that's a tactical detail. But if the data is not serving the decision maker, whether it's on blockchain or whether it's on Excel sheet, it doesn't matter. It matters that it gets to the decision maker so they can make a decision. So to me, blockchain is a buzzword. It has certain great applications, whether it's going to materialize or not. Universal general ledger, I doubt that many banks would go for that. Private blockchain has its own problems, so it's a different thing. Artificial intelligence, nobody even listens to the experts. We have top experts on our team on artificial intelligence that go like that and say, we're discussing the highly complex medical issues about should we put artificial intelligence in the bypass. And everyone would tell you, don't do that in the bypass, and it's not necessary. But marketing tells you, put it in there because it makes an enormous buzz. And the legal liability behind it, it's something enormous that you can't even imagine. Everybody wants deep learning on time series data. You can go into the German Center for Artificial Intelligence and they'll tell you deep learning is not for time series data. You have a RIMA, you have deep analysis, you have much better techniques for that. But for marketing purposes, you need. So we need to fight more the hype behind this with knowledge. And my fear is that knowledge is giving up to the hype. And that's the dangerous point with it. And I think Boeing, the Max Boeing issue down there is an algorithmic error as far as I know from some things. Correct me if I'm wrong, but that's a highly questionable issue. And I talked to pilots that were fighting the plane and say, you know, I tried to do this and the plane goes the other way because algorithms, when they're learning, would try to learn from your behavior, and then you are in a fight with the algorithm, which is natural.
Okay, and the last
So I think they're highly, at the moment, buzzwords, and even if you think the guys who founded artificial intelligence, they would tell you that this was the biggest mistake was to name it artificial intelligence. There is historically a big debate on that because this false analogy is actually creating a lot of false hope and hype. There is nothing worse than false analogies. We know it from history and many times they were used. But artificial intelligence is one of those that unfortunately most of the arguments we participate in are driven by hype and stuff. There are great merits behind it, great things, but we have to be aware of the hype.
So it could be machine learning instead of artificial intelligence or another term?
There were many proposed things. I mean, at the end, it's all statistical learning, whatever you want to call it, but it's statistics. And there is Greece is the most advanced country, and it started, if you go and look at the history, it started with rhetoric, logic, mathematics, and etc. So we need to make a difference between statistical knowledge, which is by definition imprecise and it's directional, and logical knowledge and rule-based, which he would tell you from a safety perspective, you probably don't want to rely on a statistical knowledge in 99% of the cases. So why we want to delegate this, I mean, I'll tell you my personal example. Maybe 15 years ago, we introduced a very sophisticated database for fast processing based on statistical knowledge for the banking industry. And we told them, and we put it in the contract, it's 98% accurate, and it would return a result over any stock market data in less than a second. And it did that. But the result was 98% accurate. So the banks go, try for 3 months, and then come back to us and say, this is not accurate. Look, we compare it. And they will run for 7 hours queries to get the data. This is not accurate. We said, we told you. Nobody reads that. They start immediately making decisions. And they start acting on them without that. So we had good contracts. The system was discredited right away. They said nobody wanted to use it after that. Because there are many situations when statistical approximation is not enough. I mean, look with ChatGPT what's going on. Great thing for a while, then started coming the errors and all of these things. And it's a great tool, don't get me wrong. It is great when you know the pitfalls and all of these things, it helps. But if you don't know and you blindly go,
well, it would be good if LTCM had the RAD on their team, they wouldn't have gone bust, right?
Okay, I'm conscious of the time, so just some final concluding remarks and key takeaways. Just a couple of...
May I forgot something really important.
Okay, please.
Very quickly. With regard to artificial intelligence and the system, that provides information to the air traffic controller keeps changing and learning, okay? We have a basic problem with incident and accident reproduction and analysis because we don't know what the system was thinking at the time. Okay, so this is a very, very basic thing, a very, very basic tool for safety management and safety analysis has to be reconsidered, to say the least. Thank you.
Thank you. So, Theodore, shall we start with you? Some key takeaways and concluding remarks from your side?
Yes. On my side, I think that we have to realize that having 10 failures in 10 years, almost total failures, in a specific country in the center, in Europe, of the ATM system means something. We have to look into it. And here we are embarking on a trip on full automation, etc., without looking on the engineering professionals. I think that the European Commission, ICAO, should consider the other profession and elevate their importance in their understanding to begin with, because then we'll find the solutions. I think that an ultimate solution to attract people and keep them in would be the inclusion of the profession in ICAO Annex 1.
Great, thank you. Ricardo?
Simple.
I think if I was to say one concluding remark would be that, we need to come together as an aviation industry. We're challenged more than ever. The challenges are not only sustainability. We have, I think, a decoupling of the world between, the West and the East. We have weak economies. We have fundamental difficulties in various economies of the world, which will lead to a number of difficulties, let me put it like that. We have, localized wars like the Ukraine. We have potential landmines like Taiwan. So I think as aviation, we need to come together to resolve our own issues as fast as possible. That's sustainability, which of course is the hinge-pin for our future.
Great, thank you. Rado?
I would say I agree here 100%. The professionals have to be brought into this debate because we're going with a mentality of everything should be easy. And the more complex the things become, the more we take the serious things out of them, so we hide them supposedly from the people. And the benchmark for risk has become TikTok, which is not an airplane, is not a bypass, is not a ship or anything else. So I've seen it in education and everything, how people are being driven to easy, the machine will do everything, but that's a very dangerous thing because it can lead to false assumptions and lack of knowledge in building complex systems on false ideas. And like I said, these systems are very complex. We're losing everywhere the people who have holistic knowledge of the complexity of the systems. And complex systems have idiosyncratic effects. So if you don't have these people who know that and who can react when there is an idiosyncratic effect that's unpredictable by any system, then it's doomed. I mean, it's not that there are not many scientists what happened in London and etc. There are tons of specialists. Why did it happen then? So that's very important to me, education and including of the professionals and bringing the next generation of professionals.
Thank you. David?
I agree with my colleagues, and also today it was mentioned cooperation. Cooperation between all stakeholders is essential.
Great. And there is a nice word called competition, which is putting together cooperation and competition at the same time. Obviously, we have supply chain conflicts, we have competition within different sectors, but after all, we need to realize our common future as the entire sector and move forward accordingly. So thank you very much. It was a lovely moderating this Okay, let's take a photo, yeah.
All right, well, he's setting up. Adam Triolo, Vice President of Commercial Business Development at Regent. I work for an amazing company. It's been around just under 3 years. It's a product of Y Combinator. I don't know if you're familiar with that, but Y Combinator is an organization based in San Francisco. 10,000 companies come in the front door, less than 300 come out the back. Waiting for them as they exit are venture capitalists ready to promote and seed fund organizations like ours. So we were fortunate just under 3 years ago to come out the back door, receive $10 million in seed funding to create the world's first all-electric wing and ground effect vessel called a Sea Glider. My background is aviation. I'm a professional aviator. I've been flying for 25 years. I've got type ratings in everything from turboprops to Airbus A320s. I still fly on the weekends for a small airline based in the United States in the A320 and 321. I'm about a 5,000-hour pilot. I know exactly what it means to operate aircraft, and I know just how phenomenal this technology is as we bring sea gliders to the maritime world. So I'm going to walk you through who we are as an organization. I'm going to bring you up to speed. We're going to fast forward to the end at one point with this video where you can see where we are today. I found these guys 2.5 years ago when it was 5 people above a textile manufacturing shop. Our 2 founders are from MIT. They had just hired the core team. I was the next hire with business development. And since then, we're 30,000 square feet and over 60 employees today. So we've come a really, really long way in just a short period of time. Here's Regent. We'll talk a little bit about it.
Engineering and hundreds of iterations of test experience behind it. Regent is now entering the next phase
possibilities are absolutely endless.
I think there's just a tremendous opportunity. What's interesting about Regent's concept is the size and the scale. The enormity of it is just inspiring.
What you're about to see is the full-scale design of our Viceroy Sea Glider prototype. We wanted to prove to the world that a sea glider as an entirely new mode of transportation that floats, foils, and flies was physically possible. I want to sort of take a second to talk about what it took to get here. And it all started with Mike and I, who were just entirely too fed up with regional travel. So we decided to fix it.
Think about the ability to kind of bring communities together. It's reopening cities that have lost service.
It's going to connect us all culturally and economically with all parts of the world and all parts of the country.
This is a great technology. You see it and you say, gee, that's so obvious. Why hasn't it been done before?
We set an audacious goal to fly in a year. So we brought in an audacious team. Soon we grew the team to 30, composed of some of the best aerospace and maritime engineering minds on the planet.
This is a competent group of people, and every time you meet with a different leader from a different part of the team, you say, Billy picked the right group.
And working together, we did what no one in aviation or maritime history had done before. We flew the world's first sea glider and demonstrated beyond a shadow of a doubt that this technology is a reality.
When I heard about this idea, I was like, this is the goofiest idea I've ever heard. Some of those ideas aren't the best because people are really thinking out of the box.
I'm kind of intrigued. Whenever you see this innovation, that's sort of what's been missing. We've got so much path dependency in the aerospace business. It's good to sort of break away from that.
In an industry that is so reliant on fossil fuels, we are going down the path of creating something truly sustainable.
Making this a boat, I think it's going to really have a big impact in terms of its ability to be brought to market quickly.
Sea glider are actually under the purview of the Coast Guard as a vessel, so they're a ship. A ship that happens to fly above the water.
We have $8 billion and over 500 vessels in orders. The first customer to take delivery of a Viceroy Sea Glider will be Southern Airways, Mokulele.
These guys are talking about the all-new platform, the new platform that we're going to build as the flagship of Southern's fleet. So I'm thrilled to be taking the first few. We're really thrilled to have ordered 200 sea gliders.
We were in Miami last year to announce the deal for 25 sea gliders.
I salute everybody in this building. What you have done is just amazing. I'm so proud to be part of this. Today is a great day for American innovation.
So, what is Regent? I'm going to take you from the beginning through us, and I'm going to do it in under 10 minutes as promised. So, first of all, Regent Sea Gliders. We're building wing in ground effect seagoing vessels. What's ground effect? Every time you take off or land in an aircraft, you experience ground effect. The air that gets actually compressed between the bottom of the wing and the water surface or the ground creates this aerodynamic efficiency that results in a 15 to 20% reduction in drag. By harnessing that space, we can actually carry larger payloads further distances at lower power settings. But more uniquely, there's a carve-out and an agreement between the IMO and ICAO that's been in existence for decades that says anything that operates exclusively in ground effect operates as a boat and not an aircraft. So you can kind of see how that breaks out. We're actually building a Type A WIG, or wing in ground effect vessel. Type A's are defined as boats, and so are Type B. Type C is a traditional aircraft. We've already begun work with Bureau Veritas and the U.S. Coast Guard to certify this fact. In fact, we have a letter from the U.S. Coast Guard outlining that we fall under their regulatory purview. Sea gliders are really just the novel combination of existing forms of proven technology. So you can think about the Akronoplans from the 1960s. These were 300-ton weapons of war. They needed those large jet engines at the front of the vessel to carry it through that heavy surf and develop enough speed to break the suction of the wing with the water surface. We solved that problem using hydrofoils. Our hydrofoils are active control and they're also retractable. With our retractable hydrofoils, we elevate the vessel up out of the water, and then using distributed propulsion and our blown wing technology, we force air over the wing in a nice linear fashion, and that allows us to get airborne at a much, much lower airspeed than a traditional aircraft. So our vessel floats, foils, and flies. When it's near the dock and in the no-wake zone, it floats on its hull. When it proceeds away from the dock and into the busy harbor, it rises up onto its hydrofoil. And when it's in the clearway, it can come up onto its wing and accelerate to high speed. What you'll notice here is this huge range of speed and controllability that we have with this. So when you think about wing and ground effect vessels of the past, they had to be going very, very slow in float mode or very fast in fly mode. Our vessel has this intermediate mode where we can be on hydrofoils. Because they're active control, we have control surfaces on those foils that actuate as we maneuver through the harbor. So we can adopt this 20 to 50 mile per hour range where we can navigate through these busy harbors while still maintaining lots of control, but providing that very high level of wave tolerance and comfort that passengers would expect from a vessel of this size. Once we get out into the clearway and onto our wing, we can actually fly at over 200 miles per hour using this technology. What's most unique about it, though, is, as I said, this is a boat and not a plane. So our operators drive this the same way you would drive a boat. So the takeoffs and the landings are completely automated. We're demonstrating that today with our quarter-scale prototype. So our operators will decide the direction of travel, and they'll decide the speed, and the vessel will decide whether it floats, foils, or flies. What's unique about this technology, number one, is that Regent Sea Gliders fulfill a number of missions. So we'll talk a little bit about the investors at this organization, but we have this dual track for defense logistics. That's pinned by Lockheed Martin and the Marine Corps Warfighting Lab. And then we have my area of expertise, which is the Commercial Business Development Group, with investments from Japan Airlines, Yamato, Hawaiian Airlines, and others. The reason we've received so much stakeholder engagement is because of the types of vehicles we're building. So the first vessel is the Viceroy. That's 12 passengers, 3,500 pounds of payload. And then the second vessel is the Monarch at 100 passengers, 25,000 pounds of payload. What makes these vessels unique is, number one, their cabin size, number two, their range, and number three, their payload, right? We like to tell people we're eVTOL adjacent. So the electric vertical takeoff and landing world is carrying 1 pilot, 4 passengers, about 25 statute miles. Sea Gliders can carry 1 pilot, 12 passengers, over 200 statute miles. And we do it because of the technology, we do it because of the marine certification pathway, and we do it because we're also a much larger vessel. Indicative of that fact, you can see is our interior. So 26 feet long, 6 feet high, 5.5 feet wide. That allows us to put up to 12 passengers in the back. We can also provide cargo transportation for up to 3,500 pounds or 746 cubic feet of cargo. This 5-zone cargo interior is very attractive to our partners like Yamato, who are looking to fulfill the middle mile logistics mission by taking more goods off roads, out of busy truck or out of carbon burning trucks, and putting them on clean, green, all electric Sea Gliders. We've also got VIP interiors for the well-heeled crowd out there, and then we've got a maritime patrol and search and rescue interior for those governmental agencies. We're also building a 100-passenger Monarch. So this vessel is most interesting to our large airline partners. Think of something the size of a regional jet, but the operating cost of a single-engine turboprop. So incredibly efficient, but still carrying up to 100 passengers. This is our 3-zone, 76-seat scope-compliant interior here, which you can see has both a first and economy plus class. But one of the other advantages, because we work with the marine industry, we've got lots of people interested in dual carry or combi interiors. So you can see the ability to carry cars and passengers. You've got the ability to carry all cars, which our freight customers are very interested in. You've got the ability to carry everything in between. So for instance, the LD3 containers that are currently carried by 767s today all over the world, we can fit 18 of those inside of a Monarch and carry it with 0 carbon footprint. One of the unique aspects of this company is we have a data team led by an MIT PhD. There's 5 data professionals that work with us that have run a worldwide TAM. So we know exactly where the passenger movements are, what modes they're traveling on, how much carbon they're outputting, and ways we can offset those movements with Sea Gliders. So you can see some examples here of just some of the routes that are available on current technology using sea gliders today to get people off ferries, to get people off airplanes, and using these underutilized infrastructure opportunities we have in the world's docks. I talked a little bit about our order book. So as I said, over 8 billion in orders, 500 sea gliders sold. That's a mix of both provisional and firm deposits. So this organization has a backlog of over 2.5 years. We are taking deposits. Those are firm deposits for sea glider delivery positions today. One of the most interesting aspects of our business is the fact that it bifurcates almost evenly between the maritime and aviation space. So the maritime operators see a chance to leverage their underutilized infrastructure to have their mariners pilot these vessels and tap into their existing customer base. Our aviation operators see this chance to dramatically reduce their operating costs while providing new levels of service to their existing customers. As I said, there was 5 guys above a textile shop. Now we're 30,000 square foot. We've actually got up to 600,000 square foot already negotiated with RIAC for this OQU site here. That's an airport. You can just make out in the lower left-hand side of that breakout. Those are C-130s. So you can see exactly how big this manufacturing space is going to be, and it's going to allow us to scale up to the ramp rate necessary to deliver this many sea gliders to the customers that have placed orders. We've come a long way on the technology side. You saw a snippet of the video where we float, foil, and fly our 18-foot, 400-pound demonstrator. All those videos are available online, but you can see our blown wing technology here. You can see we unlocked mode transition, moving from the float to the foil to the fly phase. What most people don't realize is so we have control surfaces both on the hydrofoil and on the wing. What's unique about this vessel is water is 1,000 times more dense than air. So you're never going to take off unless the hydrofoil actually commands a takeoff and permits it to take place. So making all of those technologies work together in a smooth way, it's demonstrated in the video, is a great case in point of what we're capable of. We're currently in the process of building our full-scale prototype. Again, that's that 15 to 17,000 pound vehicle that can carry up to 12 passengers. You can see the tooling that we've developed here for the full-scale hull. You can see the modeling around both the wing, the outriggers, and that nice deep V steep chine on the nose there. Finally, our funding. So Regent's raised over $50 million to date, backed by these world-class investors. What we will be announcing in the next 4 weeks is we've actually almost doubled this number now. So there'll be a big announcement in the next couple of weeks about the latest round of funding that Regent has secured. That will give us the ability to bring the full-scale prototype to market. So that's it in just about 10 minutes. I went over a little bit. So if you guys have any questions, we can talk about it at the cocktail hour. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Adam. It was a really interesting presentation. Dear speakers, dear friends, I feel the obligation to thank from the bottom of my heart Kostas, the Mayor of Rhodes, Adonis Kabourakis, and all the involved municipality services in the organization of this event. Mr. Adonis Arfaras, President of DERMAE, Thanasis Virinis, Savas Patas, and Maria Karabini from the Tourism Department of the Municipality of Rhodos. Teris Haldioannou, President of DOPAR, the South Aegean region, the Cannes Chamber of Commerce and Industry, and everyone who worked to make this event happen. Special thanks to the speakers of the panels and especially the keynote speakers for the level of information they provided us. Our sponsors, of course, Gian Airlines, Embraer, Fraport, Regent, Frequentis, Avibright, Dodecanso Seaways, Empros, Rhodos Palace, and Story Data. Finally, thanks to all of you who attended this event and thus supported our ongoing efforts. The advantages of tourism for our country and especially for Rhodos are countless. However, looking to the future, we need to redefine the basic principles on which tourism is based. We need to consider the long-term effects of tourism on the environment. By applying the principles of sustainability to the design of our future tourism product, we gain more control over anything that may take us away from our goal, which should be none other than the well-being of the local community, now and in the future. It is a fact that tourism is almost completely dependent on aviation. As pointed out in this forum, more than 450 jobs and over 10% of the country's GDP are supported by the air transport and foreign tourists arriving by air. So it is certain that we should always be aware of anything that affects the aviation sector. Climate change and environmental issues, the ability and costs of aviation fuel, the conflict between Russia and Ukraine, air traffic and airport capacity constraints are some of the challenges facing the air transport market and do not seem to be a quick solution, at least in the near future. Cybercrime remains a clear risk to the aviation sector that cannot be ignored. In some cases, employment delays may act as a constraint on airlines' ability to meet passengers' demand. The path towards a sustainable aviation and tourism industry which promises prosperity for all has many pitfalls. We can't change everything at once, as Mr. Holloway said, but but if we choose wisely and work together with transparency, flexibility, and honesty, progress in some areas will lead to progress in many others. Finally, all of us who love aviation, we wish everyone involved in the aviation and tourism chain a future without surprises and unusual situations, and above all, health and personal happiness. Thank you very much.